Chapter 1487. Hi, Miss Wire. You're still so beautiful. Ruan Faxben walked into the magic shop with a proud expression. Seeing Ruan Faxben walk in, Wire and Mephisto's expressions darkened. That day, Ruan Faxben and Chen Zhao had fought in the shop and damaged a lot of goods and merchandise. Ruan, you still dare to come here? Do you want to die? Mephisto wasn't polite at all. She was already about to attack. Perhaps she didn't dare to kill here, but she dared to beat Ruan Faxben up until he couldn't take care of himself. Please praise my guild leader for allowing me to appear here. This is a check for you as compensation. Also, pray in your heart and thank my guild leader for his kindness to you. Ruan Faxben's exaggerated posture and frivolous tone made him sound like a fanatic. It really made people wonder if he was sick in the head. Is he the Asian who beat you into a pig's head? Wire curled her lips. Ruan Faxben had never been a believer. Alchemists were never religious. Plus, Ruan was his enemy. Wire didn't believe that Ruan Faxben would become Chen Zhao's believer in just a few days. Of course, Ruan Faxben didn't really become Chen Zhao's believer. He was just shocked by Chen Zhao's generosity. 3 dragons. 3 real dragons. To an alchemist like Ruan Faxben, there were 3 huge mountains of treasures. Ruan Faxben could do anything he could think of to raise money for experiments and research. Ruan Faxi could have done anything he could think of to raise money for experiments and alchemy. Using dragon scales to make equipment, dragon horns to make weapons, and dragon eyes to make magic tools. Using dragon scales to create equipment, dragon horns to create weapons, and dragon eyes to create magic tools. Using dragon scales to make equipment, dragon horns to make weapons, and dragon eyes to make magic tools. Not just for Ruan Faxben, but for any alchemist in the world, it was too extravagant. After seeing the check, Mephisto's expression finally improved. Why are you here? To give you a check, of course. Isn't that enough? Ruan Faxben said. Actually, he really wanted to keep the check for himself. But if he did that, Chen Zhao would stuff him into the dragons, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Moreover, he wasn't joking. He would really do it. From the first day he joined the supernatural organization, he received the first rule and a warning at the same time. Don't disobey their president, Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao had a bad temper. If there's nothing else, get out of my shop. Mephisto's didn't like Ruan Faxben, even though the latter had just compensated him with a huge sum of money. Let's not talk about how bad Ruan Faxi's reputation was. Just thinking about the trouble he had brought to the magic shop last time made Mephisto's furious at Ruan Faxben. Of course there is. I want to buy some magic materials. Because Wester wanted him to make a large batch of alchemy products with dragon materials as the main raw materials. He still needed some other magic materials. So many materials. You didn't steal all the money from the supernatural organization, did you? Mephisto had to be suspicious. Ruan Faxben's reputation was too bad. Besides, Ruan Faxi did not have that much money. God, what kind of person do you think I am? How could I steal money? Ruan Faxi was actually tempted when he received the check. But thinking of Chen Zhao, the supernatural organization, and that meat grinder, Ruan Faxi sobered up again. Money was a good thing, but the key was to spend it. That was money. He hadn't even used a high-level material like a dragon's body to make a magic tool. How could he die for money? His dream was to create a divine artifact. Now hope was in front of him. He could also have the luxury of failing again and again. Why would he take the risk of using this money when there was such a good thing? Even if he got the money, he would be worried all day. Plus, he had signed the contract. The supernatural organization would find him sooner or later. He might as well stay in the organization. Although his freedom was limited, at least his research and alchemy needs would be satisfied. Oh, be careful. Many spiritualists came to LA. Many of them have conflicts with you. Mephisto, you still love me. You care about me. Ruan Faxi looked at Mephisto with tears in his eyes. Mephistos, you still love me. You care about me. In that instant, Ruan Faxben looked at Mephistos with tears in his eyes. Mephistos' face darkened. Piss off. Okay, I'll stop joking. Why did they come to LA? Did they spread the news that I'm here? Something big happened in the spiritual world. What? Ruan Faxi asked curiously. The 23rd generation Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church is about to reach the end of her life, Mephisto said. The old witch who's lived for 140 years. Ruan asked in surprise. Don't blame him for being mean. The 23rd generation Blood Mary was really too famous. It could be said that there was no one in the spirit world who did not know about it. Ruan Faxi was quite famous, but compared to the 23rd generation Blood Mary, he was really insignificant. However, these words were not so pleasant to Mephisto's ears. She wasn't young anymore, and the word, which sounded like it was directed at her. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll tear you to pieces or scram before I do, Mephisto said in an unfriendly tone. Just like in wuxia novels, spiritualists were the same. Old people, women, and children couldn't be messed with, especially since Mephisto had two of them. Let's get back to the main topic. The Scarlet Church is old. Blood Mary is dying. It's a big deal, but what does it have to do with the people who came to LA? The Scarlet Church has a legacy that can pass magic to the next generation. It can also be passed to anyone. This legacy doesn't have the side effects of forcefully swallowing it. It can perfectly fuse with one's own magic. The 23rd generation Blood Mary divided her magic into 98 parts. Ruan Faxi's eyes lit up. So, LA is the location of the legacy mission. On the route of the Turin ghost ship, Arma Island, 600 kilometers away from Los Angeles, was one of the stops of the Turin ghost ship. Hundreds of years ago, Arma Island was a trading island. However, because of the Turin, all the people on that island died or escaped from Arma Island. That place became the main battlefield to destroy the Turin ghost ship. Chapter 1488. Of course, Ruan Faxi would bring the news back to the supernatural organization. In fact, the organization was the latest to know. West had always been in charge of receiving information from the outside. However, he'd been really busy in the past 2 days. Everyone was busy dealing with the 3 dragon corpses that Qin Zhao had brought back. Nothing was more important than the 3 dragons. There was nothing more precious than a 3-headed dragon. Even money couldn't buy them. How many magical paths were there in the world that were made from a certain part of a dragon? About 1,000. What about the magic tools made from pure-blooded dragon parts? Probably only 1/10 of the total. There were more than 100 of them. Moreover, most of these 100 or so magic tools made from pure-blooded dragons were just scraps. But there were still a few that were holy artifacts. However, they didn't have much to do with the word legend. Simply put, they were powerful magic tools. There weren't many holy artifacts in the world, but they weren't few either. They were precious, but if someone was willing to spend a few $billion, they might be able to buy one. But for a regular person, spending a few $billion on a holy artifact might not be as practical as hiring an army. It was also cheaper, of course, for an alchemist to be able to create a holy artifact and have it be passed down for 100 or 1,000 years along with their name. This was the greatest pursuit of an alchemist. After hearing the news, Chen Zhao also rushed to the headquarters. Everyone's here, Chen Zhao said. Let's have a meeting. It was rare for everyone to be present, and even Adus participated in this meeting. Chen Zhao's student, Lit Grove and Bona were also here. Lit, Grove, and Bona were the weakest in the organization. Nevertheless, Lit Grove was very motivated and hardworking. West coughed and glanced at Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao was the one who'd hosted the meeting. West stood up and said, "There are 2 main topics for this meeting. The first is the distribution of dragon parts. First of all, dragon meat. At present, we can confirm that if dragon meat is eaten over a long period of time, it can strengthen one's physique. There are no side effects, and there is no possibility of mutation. Among them, the Lightning Squad's improvement is the most obvious. As a long-term supply of dragon meat, everyone can get a piece of dragon meat for every meal. Does anyone disagree? Or does he have a different opinion? West scanned the crowd. No one raised their hand. That means everyone passed, right? West said, secondly, regarding the proposal to mass-produce dragon-scale armor, I think that everyone in the association should wear and equip a set of dragon-scale armor. According to the tests, it has been confirmed that the skin of 3 types of dragons has extremely strong physical and magical defense. Among them, the silver dragon skin is extremely resistant to fire, the fire dragon skin is extremely resistant to ice, and the black dragon skin is more resistant to fire and darkness. Currently, the amount of dragon skin is very large, so I suggest that everyone should have a set of 3. 1 silver dragon armor, 1 fire dragon armor, and 1 black dragon armor. Any objections? Looks like there are no objections. West glanced at everyone. Next is dragon blood. Right now, the only confirmed way to use dragon blood is for Gaia to purify it and fuse it into her own bloodline to increase the purity of her bloodline. Therefore, we should give Gaia a sufficient supply of dragon blood. Any objections? Just then, Ruan Faxi stood up. I have an objection. I have no objections to purifying Gaia's own bloodline, but I hope to preserve enough dragon blood. Dragon blood isn't completely useless. There are many recorded uses, but because the method of use has been lost, we can't use dragon blood for now. But that doesn't mean we can't use it in the future. Based on Gaia's current consumption, she can only purify 100 grams of dragon blood per day. If she uses it alone, she won't even be able to use 1/10 of a dragon's blood in 100 years. I won't waste dragon blood if it's not what I need. Gaia expressed her stance. It was fine as long as it was enough. More was indeed too wasteful. Next is, let me say a few words. Chen Zhao stood up. Only Chen Zhao could casually interrupt someone else. As for the dragon horns, eyes and balls, you don't have to worry about the quantity. In fact, if you enter the 9th level, you can kill even more dragons. Since I successfully killed one, I can do it again. So, I hope that this time, we'll discuss how to use and distribute them, and not who gets this and who gets that. President, I was just about to talk about that, Wes said. Okay, continue. The most precious parts of a dragon's body are the dragon horns, dragon eyes, and dragon balls. Therefore, my suggestion is that to use these 3, you need to be able to reach the 3rd floor of the Tower of Trials by yourself. Mr. West, what about Patty and me? Do you think we have the ability to enter the 3rd level? Raz's tone was somewhat dissatisfied. I'll choose the 2 of you. When I think you're qualified, you'll be qualified, Qin Zhao said. Since the president is testing us, I have no objections. Raz was convinced by Qin Zhao. I have no objections either, Patya hurriedly said. She'd always been aloof from worldly affairs. Also, Pamela, do you have any requests regarding the evil spirit group you lead? West looked at Pamela. Because the evil spirit group, including Pamela, couldn't use or enjoy dragon meat, dragon blood, and most magic tools, West had to compensate them. It could also be said that he was accommodating them. After all, an organization had to be fair and just. I need a list to create a magic array for the evil spirit nest. I don't have any other requests. Pamela's reply was short. Then talk to Alyssa and report to me if you need anything, West said. West said, next, let's talk about the second topic. Luong has brought back a piece of news. Luong, explain it. Ruan stood up again and told Qin Zhao what he'd heard outside. Everyone listened attentively. Qin Zhao looked at West. West, you want us to participate in this fight too? Are we going to destroy that Turin ghost ship? To be honest, if it's just one of the 98 portions of 23rd Blood Mary's magic power, it's too unattractive to us. I don't think it's worth mobilizing so many people for only one person to increase her magic power. What I want to say is that I suggest you act individually. Chapter 1489. What do you mean? Everyone looked at West. To be honest, I don't think this mission is worth everyone in the association. West's horizons had expanded long ago. Why not see what was lying in the warehouse behind their house? A mere specter ship, even if it was the famous Turin, was not worth it for them to mobilize all of their forces. To West, this mission issued by the Scarlet Church was a good test for the association members. They felt that they could complete the mission if they had the ability. Those who were interested could also complete the mission. The association wouldn't provide them with support. At least, as long as their lives weren't in danger, the association wouldn't help. West then explained his thoughts. I won't go, Gaia said. The legacy of the Scarlet Church? It's not suitable for me. Hallie shrugged, also refusing. Teacher, I want to go. Lit Grove looked at Chun Zhao. Lit Grove was an awakened, the same type as Gaia. However, Lit Grove's awakened ability wasn't an offensive ability. Weakness detection wasn't weak, but it wasn't strong either. If Chun Zhao had this spell, he'd definitely be invincible. As for Lit Grove's strength, it was still up for debate. Lit Grove was very familiar with weakness detection now. However, there was a limit to it. For example, if he was facing Qin Zhao or an enemy at Qin Zhao's level. When he used his ability to search for Qin Zhao's weakness, Qin Zhao would already slap him against the wall. But he couldn't say that Lit Grove was weak. If he wore his equipment now, he could even fight Jalanash back and forth. Weakness detection could be used on enemies a few levels higher than him. It wasn't omnipotent, but it had a lot of potential. Although Lit Grove said he couldn't pass the first level of the tower, he could already do it with ease. One had to know that this ability of his was a semi-support ability. Then go, Qin Zhao said calmly. But don't be too rash. Staying alive is more important. The association doesn't lack opportunities to improve. Of course, if there's a chance, grab it. To Little Grove, Chen Zhao's words were like words of encouragement. Not only did Lit Grove have to participate, but Bona also had to participate. Jalanash, Moore, and Morid had to participate as well. Giselle also wanted to participate. So, Chen Zhao couldn't be biased. In any case, the ability was on the table. Whoever had the ability could go and complete it. Qin Zhao didn't even want to participate, because if he interfered and completed the mission, he would not be able to escape. Who would receive the Scarlet Church's reward then? Giving it to anyone would be unfair to others. Chen Zhao wasn't being arrogant. With his current strength, Spectre ship was nothing to him. He had seen no less than 10 ghost ships in his life. For example, the storm 2 months ago. More than 10 Spectre ships were blown over. If he made a move, no one else would be able to do anything. Be careful. I don't want to give you a pension. This year's expenses are much higher than planned. Hopefully, we'll still have money to go on a vacation at the end of the year, Wes said. Oh, the inheritance of the Scarlet Church? Mansari's eyes lit up. He now had complete control over the anti-terrorism security department. He even secretly formed a special team. Just like the supernatural organization, it was a team made up of spiritualists. Of course, the team wasn't very strong yet. Mansari acknowledged the new team's strength, but he still didn't think that they could replace the supernatural organization. At least not in a short time. They needed to continue growing. Mansari didn't plan to expose them for now. Lee, tell Westana to lead our new team members and try to complete this mission, Mansari said. Li Mu and Westana were now Mansari's left and right hands. Through training, Westana had mastered the basics of being a secret agent and had a certain level of combat ability. As the person in charge of the secret team, she arranged and managed it. Li Mu had no talent for fighting at all, but she was very good at administrative work. There were many documents that gave Mansari headaches, but Li Mu could help him manage them in an orderly manner. Boss, I've analyzed the Spectre ship and the Spectre ship Turin in this incident. It's not something our secret team can deal with at the moment. No, you don't understand. I hope they can try to complete the mission. Not that they have to, Mansari said. Mansari said, a soldier who has never been on the battlefield is never a real soldier. Mansari knew that the secret team wasn't strong enough, but he hoped that the team could carry out some missions and grow. Then he would grow through the missions. That was his original intention. According to the Supernatural Organization's data analysis, they've completed at least 300 missions in a year, while the Supernatural Organization has less than 30 people, Mansari said. This means that on average, each person has participated in at least 10 missions in a year, and this doesn't include double or team missions. At the same time, their strength has increased by leaps and bounds. How can they have such growth? Mansari sighed. Obviously, it's because their new leader, Chin, believes in training his subordinates through battles. Even he often participates in all kinds of difficult and dangerous missions. As for our secret team, we can only provide funds and nothing else. They don't even have the chance to fight. That's why I hope they won't miss this chance. Boss, what if we use the Supernatural Organization to complete the mission and get the Scarlet Church's reward? Li Mu asked. Apparently, this reward can instantly make a powerful spiritualist, Mansari said. Mansari was dazed. He looked hesitant. They definitely know the inside story, Mansari said. Maybe even more than us. They won't help us complete the mission for no reason. Then we'll pay. If 1 million isn't enough, we'll pay 2 million. Li Mu adjusted his glasses. I've calculated their annual operating expenses. It's far more than 20 million US dollars. I think, based on their current operating budget, they may not be able to last until the end of the year because of lack of funds. Currently, our department's funds are very sufficient, so I think if we can use money to buy a strong person, it might not be a bad choice. Chapter 1490. Delamore, our luck is here, Navot said excitedly. What luck is here? Delamore asked, confused. The Scarlet Church, that powerful and mysterious Nordic sect. Nawat Singh looked at Delamore excitedly and told Delamore the news she had gathered. You're saying that we can fight for the legacy of the 23rd Blood Mary? Yes, but how can we fight for it? Delamore had no confidence in herself at all. She didn't even have any confidence in Nawat's. Nawat Singh's forte was perception magic. It wasn't that she didn't know offensive magic, but compared to her perception magic, it was like a toy gun. But they had to face the ghost ship. That was a very terrifying existence. We can't do it, but Chun Ki, don't forget. He still owes us a favor. Delamore's heart jumped. Yeah, Chin can definitely do it. To him, the ghost ship is no different from a small boat. But if we get it, how do we split it? Even if it's just one legacy, we can't take it all. If we take it together, there'll probably be leftovers. Navots knew her limits. Then I'll call him. Hey, Delamore, what's up? Soon, Chin Zhao understood why Dalymore had called. You want that legacy? Yes, Delamore said directly. There was no need to hide anything from Chin Zhao. Rather than beating around the bush, it was better to be straightforward. Chin Zhao was silent for a long time. I'm afraid I can't help you this time. Why? My subordinates are fighting for the legacy too. I can't ruin it for my own people, Chin Zhao said. Just then, Navots took the phone and said, Mr. Chin, there are a total of 98 scarlet legacies in this world. I believe that with your ability, as long as you are willing, there will be no problem at all. Am I right? Navots was clearly much smarter than Delamore. Delamore was still a newbie in the spiritual world. Nawat Singh, on the other hand, was a true veteran. To be honest, I think that a bottle of potion can increase your magic power level much more than the Scarlet Legacy. It's also more effective. Chan Zhao didn't have time to go out recently. The value is different, Navot said. How about this? I'll give each of you a bottle of mana potion and a piece of magic dragon scale armor. It's made from the skin of a pure-blooded black dragon. It has extremely strong magic resistance. What do you think of its value? Nawat Singh and Delamore looked at each other. Even a novice like Delamore knew how rare pure-blooded dragons were. Are you sure you can really provide magic dragon-scale armor made from the skin of a pure-blooded black dragon? Yes, Qin Zhao answered. If you want the Scarlet Legacy, I don't have the time and there are too many competitors. I can't get it just because I'm strong enough, unless I kill all the other competitors. But I won't do that. As for the value of a pure-blooded black dragon skin, I believe I don't need to say more. Black dragon skin doesn't just have strong magic resistance. It also has great physical resistance. As long as you don't get hit by a large-caliber sniper rifle, you can even use it as a bulletproof vest. Actually, black dragon skin could also block large-caliber sniper rifles. But the destructive power of a sniper rifle wasn't just about penetration. It also had great physical energy. When a bullet hit a person's body, even if the dragon skin blocked the bullet, the physical energy would still be released into the person's body. It was like a person wearing a bulletproof vest and getting hit by a train. To Qin Zhao, he could have as much dragon skin as he wanted. It wasn't even as valuable as the mana potion. But in the outside world, dragon skin was definitely one of the top 10 rare magic materials in the world. Mr. Qin, you've slain a dragon? Nawat Singh guessed. She didn't dare to believe it, but thinking of Qin Zhao's power, she felt that it was very possible. There were indeed pure-blooded dragons in the world, but they would only appear once every few decades, and most of the time it was fleeting, appearing in a certain place for a while. They would leave before the spiritualists could gather and disappear. Even modern military satellites could not detect the movements of the dragon clan. Even if they gathered, it would be very difficult to kill a dragon. Even if they managed to win with numbers, the dragon could just flap its wings and escape. Most people could only watch and sigh. Yes, Qin Zhao answered. I'm quite lucky. I met a dragon. I hope to get 200 kilograms of dragon blood, Nawat Singh said. Huh? Why do you want dragon blood? You have dragon blood? Qin Zhao asked. For bathing. Are you crazy? Dragon blood has strong burning properties. Do you want to disfigure yourself? Qin Zhao had tried it with his hands. Even the blood of a silver dragon would burn his skin. Mr. Qin, I have a formula that can dispel the burning properties of dragon blood. As long as there's enough of it, it can also absorb the dragon's resistance. It can even nullify some low-level spells. Qin Zhao raised an eyebrow. I can give you 400 kilograms of dragon blood. But I want this formula. The effect of the formula overlapped with magic dragon-scale armor, but it wasn't as strong. More importantly, magic dragon-scale armor couldn't be worn all the time. However, the resistance gained from bathing in dragon blood could be maintained. It was already very valuable to be able to nullify low-level spells. Right now, 80% of spiritualists only knew low-level spells. This meant that Qin Zhao wouldn't lose against 80% of spiritualists. Sure, Nawat paused. Mr. Qin, she said, are you willing to sell the dragon horn? You want to buy it? It wasn't that Qin Zhao looked down on Nawat. Nawat Singh was obviously not a rich person. Qin Zhao felt that even Daly might not be able to afford it unless her parents paid. I'd like to ask, how much is it? Nawat Singh changed her previous initiative and asked shyly instead. I think it's better if you don't know. Qin, I have money, Daly said. Daly, are you going to ask your father for money? Or your mother? I don't have enough money to buy the dragon horn. I have over $100 million. Chapter 1491. Qin Zhao chuckled, ignoring the fact that Dahlia wouldn't spend all her money on a dragon horn. Even if she really bought it, $100 million wouldn't be enough. If Qin Zhao multiplied it by 10, he would consider it. Delamore, let me explain it to you. The last time a dragon appeared was in 1914. and the last time a pure-blooded dragon was hunted was in 1798. According to the ancient records, in that battle to slay the dragon, more than 300 spiritualists participated in the battle, and most of them were witches. In the end, only 18 of them survived. In the end, the dragon only went through a simple collection of materials and took away some of the main magical raw materials. Do you think 100 million USD is enough to buy a dragon horn? Indeed, to Qin Zhao and the supernatural organization, dragons weren't rare anymore. But if Qin Zhao sold it cheaply, he'd be letting down the dragon race. Plus, who knew how many pure-blood dragons existed in the world? Perhaps they were hiding in the crowd. Once they found out that one of their kind had been killed and the corpse sold cheaply, they might come looking for Qin Zhao. This wasn't just the price of raw materials. It was also the price Qin Zhao had to bear. Qin Zhao believed that there were definitely pure-blood dragons in the world. Gaia was the best proof, because she was a mixed blood. During the most active era of dragons in the Middle Ages, there were too many dragons with traces and histories. But compared to the records of humans killing dragons and the natural death rate of dragons, there should be more active dragons in the Middle Ages that survived to the modern era. Moreover, the dragon race could transform into human form. So, Qin Zhao suspected that there were far more pure-blood dragons in the world than he'd imagined. In fact, some ancient dragons might even be more powerful than Qin Zhao after years of baptism and accumulation of power. So, Qin Zhao never dared to say that he was invincible. He didn't want a pure-blood dragon to appear and slap him in the face. Of course, there were risks, but they weren't big. Since the dragons hid themselves, they definitely knew that the current era wasn't one they could do as they pleased. Any government had the ability to kill dragons. Even without spiritualists, they could still kill dragons with modern weapons. If Qin Zhao fought with a dragon, as long as Qin Zhao wasn't killed instantly, there was a high chance that the dragon would die. No matter how strong Qin Zhao was, he was still a human. But dragons were different. Their huge bodies could cause panic in society. He wasn't afraid at all if the dragons fought him in their human forms. Unless it was a dragon at the level of Obito's mother, Qin Zhao would definitely admit defeat. Meanwhile, did great lords of the dragon race exist in this world? Qin Zhao was doubtful. Of course, no matter what, it was impossible to sell it cheaply. Not in this lifetime. He had risked his life for it. A dragon horn in the hands of a reliable alchemist might represent the birth of a divine tool. Even if they didn't want to sell it for the price of a divine artifact, they could at least not embarrass the dragon clan. Daily Moore was speechless. According to Qin Zhao, a dragon horn was obviously worth an astronomical amount of wealth. Her wealth was indeed not enough, unless she shamelessly begged Qin Zhao. However, Dahlia was still a little proud. She didn't think that it was because of her friendship with Qin Zhao or that favor. Qin Zhao would give her the dragon horn. It was like a tycoon owing a commoner a favor. Could the tycoon give the commoner his entire fortune because of this favor? That was clearly impossible. Looks like I don't understand the market, Dahlia said helplessly. Then, after the magic dragon scale armor is made, I'll send it to you along with the dragon blood. Prepare the recipe for me too. For most people, bathing in dragon blood wasn't just something they could only dream of. They didn't even have the fortune to enjoy it. Before this, Qin Zhao had also bathed in dragon blood. The burning sensation wasn't pleasant. Apart from Gaia, no one else could bear it. President, the silver dragon head, is done. Do you need me to send it over? West called Qin Zhao. Do you have any dye? It won't fade in the wind and the sun. Of course, it's harmless. I'll put it in the yard. The dye was so that people wouldn't find out that it was a real skeleton. After all, Qin Zhao's house would occasionally have regular guests. That's not hard. I'll send it over in the afternoon. Okay. In the afternoon, West and Erdos arrived in their car. West had been to Qin Zhao's new house before. Aduz was here for the first time. He mainly came to see the world. Qin Zhao carried the skull to the yard. Qin, Are these your spoils of war from slaying the dragon last time? It's so big. Feilai saw Chen Zhao carry the huge skull in. Yes, Feilai. Do you think the head is facing inside or outside? Facing inside, Feilai said. Don't put it so straight. Slant it a bit. More outwards. Yes, that's perfect. Feilai nodded in satisfaction. Mr. West, Mr. Aduz, you're here. Take a seat. I'll have the underlings prepare. As the hostess, Feilai was very hospitable. Moreover, West and Aduz were old friends. They knew many of the family's secrets. Yeah. Little Jerlin saw the dragon skull that was set up and ran out excitedly. Dad, is this my birthday present? Your birthday isn't here yet. Jerlin ran to the skull and carefully stuck her head into the open mouth. So big, Jerlin exclaimed. The teeth are as big as Jerlin's. The silver dragon's teeth were very large. The two exposed main teeth were 150 centimeters long. The other teeth on the sides were 50 or 60 centimeters long. The dragon's head was about 15 meters long and took up a quarter of the yard. Feilai had a hobby of collecting otherworldlings. Chen Zhao developed this hobby mainly because he often hunted mutants. When he was at Mirror Lake Villa, there was one in the basement, but because it was used as a surgery room, Chen Zhao had already put away the demon skeleton. Compared to the silver dragon's skull, the demon skeleton was really nothing. Feilai also admired the silver dragon skull. Because it had a layer of artificial gel dye, it looked a bit fake. Feilai didn't care, though. She knew that it was real. Chapter 1492. A few underlings busied themselves, going in and out of the yard and kitchen. Feilai hugged little Larissa and chatted with West and Aduz. Little Jerlin couldn't sit still. She kept climbing up and down. It wasn't just little Jerlin. The pets were the same. Abitos nestled in the dragon's mouth, treating it as his nest. Is Nama Island far from L.A.? Feilai asked curiously. No, only 600 kilometers from L.A., West said directly. He didn't want to hide it. When will the ghost ship arrive? It's expected to be on Saturday, or the weekend, West replied. He didn't even see Chen Zhao's look. Chen Zhao covered his head. Feilai usually asked this because she wanted to join in on the fun. Chen Zhao was helpless, but Feilai had already spoken. Chen, let's go to Nama Island for vacation this weekend. Sure, Chen Zhao said, smiling. President, are you going to participate in the mission to destroy the ghost ship? West asked, looking up. He hadn't realized his problem yet. He thought that Chen Zhao was going to help someone in the association. When he'd suggested this mission, he hoped that everyone wouldn't need Chen Zhao's help. They would participate in the mission themselves. He didn't care whether it was completed or not. He hoped that the association members would participate themselves. But if Chen Zhao joined, what was the point? The Turin ghost ship was indeed fierce. But could it be fiercer than Chen Zhao? No, we're just going for a vacation. Little Jerlin and Larissa are going too. Vacation, you understand? I see. West didn't say anything else. After all, he was Chen Zhao's subordinate. West guessed that Chen Zhao was worried about Jolene and Nash, so he'd gone to ensure their safety. But West didn't have the time to care about Chen Zhao's attitude. There were too many spiritualists in L.A. these few days. Most of them were here for the Scarlet Legacy. But there were always a few who didn't know what was good for them. They dared to cause trouble in L.A. West had no choice but to deal with these weaklings. The supernatural organization wasn't in charge of criminal cases. But if it was a criminal case created by someone from the spiritual world, they'd take it too. For most of the spiritualists, perhaps they would behave themselves in their hometown. But in other places, they couldn't help but feel itchy. They felt that it was possible to make money and leave. Unfortunately, this was Los Angeles. Chen Zhao had zero tolerance for this. Usually, paranormal crimes would leave some traces behind. It was different from the damage and destruction caused by gunshots or cold weapons. Or it could be traces of magic and magic power. In short, this was not a problem for the supernatural organization. In fact, psychic criminals are easier to find than regular criminal offenders. Friday, the sky was blue and the sea was blue. The waves on the sea were no more than 1 meter high. This was the best time to spend a vacation on the sea. Chen Zhao's family was currently on the yacht, enjoying a leisurely holiday. The lesser demons had taken over everything on the yacht, from sailing to cleaning to mechanical maintenance. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai planned to take a 3-day, 2-night vacation. The hydra was very slow. Chen Zhao had slowed it down on purpose. Otherwise, a round trip of less than 2,000 kilometers would probably be completed in a day. Little Larissa could already crawl, faster than little Jerlin last year. This was mainly because of little Jerlin's guidance. Little Jerlin stayed with little Larissa every day, taking care of her. To teach little Larissa, Jerlin also lay on the ground with her and taught her how to move and kick. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai watched the 2 little meatballs grow up day by day. That was the feeling that allowed them to experience the joy of being a parent. After giving birth to little Larissa, Fei Lai started working out and losing weight in less than a week. Back then, she had gained a lot of weight for little Larissa in her stomach. Chen Zhao suggested that Fei Lai take confinement. However, foreigners did not have the concept of confinement. Some women in the workplace would go to work 3 days after giving birth. Of course, other than the concept of confinement, it was also because of their race. Foreigners' overall physiques were indeed better than Asians. On the other hand, Caucasian women grew up 1 to 2 years earlier than Asians, while men grew up 2 to 3 years earlier. On the other hand, their bodies fully matured about 5 years earlier than Asians. This meant that Caucasians aged faster than Asians. In fact, because they did not have the habit of confinement, the hormones in white women's bodies would be out of balance after giving birth for the first time, causing them to age faster. The imbalance of hormones would also cause the pores and follicles to grow bigger. 20% of the women even needed to shave. Razors and razors became essential daily necessities. White women's hair growth was even thicker than Asians' men's. Chen Zhao did not want Fei Lai to shave every day, so he had been controlling her diet recently. All the pets were running around crazily on the yacht. "Master, I also want a yacht named after me." Black Ma came to Chen Zhao's side shyly. "No, the next yacht should be named after me," White Ma shouted. Chen Zhao kicked them all into the sea. "Meow, human, I think you should consider using the great name Samuel. My name will also bless your battleship, allowing you to dominate the 7 seas and rule the world." Chen Zhao glanced at Samuel and picked him up. "Give me a blessing first. If you can do it, I'll give you the naming rights for the next yacht. This is my gift to you. Shouldn't you feel honored?" "Honored my asterisk SS." Chen Zhao casually threw Samuel off the 3rd deck. "Beelzebub, save me." Beelzebub flew over and picked Samuel up in his mouth. Then he landed accurately on the lower deck. In this family, Beelzebub and Raymond were Samuel's loyal lackeys. Even though they were subordinate to the king of gluttony and the king of sex, Samuel's status was too high. They had no choice but to submit to Samuel's monstrous might. Even though Samuel was just a kitten in the human world, they still could not think of disobeying him. This time King Kong came too, but because he was too afraid of the sea, he stayed on the top deck. To him, the further away he was from the sea, the safer he was. "King Kong, how do I strengthen my body now?" Chen Zhao asked. "Master, you need to collect the blood of 100 subordinates of the King of Power. Then find the secret medicine shadow in hell and ask him to help you make power blood." As the subordinate of the King of Power, King Kong knew all the ways to strengthen one's body. Chapter 1493. Is there any other way? Chen Zhao asked. Killing 100 demons was easy. He just needed to go to hell. But collecting the blood of 100 subordinates of the King of Power was troublesome. First of all, the King of Power was one of the 99 demon kings. Moreover, The number of subordinates of the King of Power was extremely low. In hell, they were as rare as pandas. King Kong was one, but he could only be one. Yes, you can get a drop of blood from the King of Power. As long as you don't explode, you'll have the constitution of a lord. Fuck, that's as good as not saying anything. I might as well ask the handsome guy for a drop of blood. Of course, a drop of the handsome guy's blood was useless to Qin Zhao too. That thing was only useful for top lords. A drop of blood could create a secondary demon king. Anyone below the level of a great lord would die with a touch. If it released its full power, everything within 100 kilometers would turn into ashes. Even a great lord would not be spared. As for getting a drop of blood from the King of Power, Qin Zhao was right. He was still 1,000,000 kilometers away from the lesser demon king. He wasn't even a lord yet. Even if he really won the lottery, he would explode, let alone collect it. He should think about how to collect the blood of 100 King of Power. Ask Beelzebub Zophie to help him collect it? The couple was waging war now. They didn't have the time to find and kill the subordinates of the King of Power. Plus, if the King of Power found out that the couple specifically killed his subordinates, they might be targeted by the King of Power. With the couple's power, they definitely couldn't beat the King of Power. Or they could ask the handsome guy to collect it. But if the Lord of Hell went to the King of Power and asked him to kill 100 of his subordinates, would that be okay? Even the handsome guy probably wouldn't be able to do that. Or go to hell himself. But both the handsome guy and Beelzebub Zophie could only summon for 24 hours. How big of an area could they search in 24 hours? Is there any other way? Yes, the heart of the earth and the demonic root. What's the heart of the earth? What is the Majuni root? 10,000 meters underground in hell, there's a kind of stone demon. You might be able to find a heart of the earth in 10,000 stone demons. King Kong said the Mortuoni root is the reproductive organ of the abyss wanderers. Qin Zhao's face darkened. Is there no reliable way? I can do it with my current abilities. As a subordinate of the King of Power, King Kong knew all the ways in the world to increase his power. Even if Qin Zhao surpassed the King of Power one day, King Kong would know how to increase Qin Zhao's power, because this was an ability bestowed upon them by the laws of power. However, the more King Kong spoke, the more ridiculous it became. The methods were endless. The only difference was whether they were reliable or not. For example, he could absorb a great lord's mana source and reshape it into a power source. If I can steal a great lord's mana source, do I still need to waste words with you? Why don't you create your own source of power? What do you mean by creating a source of power? What is the source of power? Just like the mana source. According to the laws of the King of Power, power is also the source of all physical power. What about your source of power? Me? I don't have one. I can't create a source of power. I'm not at that level yet. Master, you've already reached the level of creating a source of power. King Kong shook his head. Also, among the King of Power subordinates, there are less than 10 who have a source of power. Even some great lords don't have a source of power. How many subordinates does the King of Power have? Qin Zhao asked. Around 1,000, King Kong said. Maybe more. 1%. Qin Zhao touched his chin. Just then, Samuel jumped to King Kong's side. The King of Power has 1,000 subordinates? I thought your race was about to go extinct. A few thousand years ago, my original body tried to increase my power and capture the subordinates of the King of Power. Evidently, to a demon king like Samuel, killing was not a big deal. So what if he destroyed a race of demons? So what if this race was the subordinate of a secondary demon king? Then, how do I create a source of power? A feeling. Be more specific. Specifically, if you feel it, then you succeed. Do you have anything else? Qin Zhao asked with a dark expression. I also know that if I feel it, then I succeed. But what is the feeling? Who would be able to understand such a general concept? Just then, a yacht approached from the side. The yacht was only a quarter of the length of the Hydra, but it was already quite big. There were a few people on the deck of the yacht. There were probably a few more in the cabin. These people didn't look like rich people, but they didn't look like ordinary people either. Chun Zhao saw that one of them had an obvious supernatural style. The person's face was painted with oil patterns. He wore a gentleman's hat and a pure white suit. There was a flower on his chest, and his left eye was golden. The others weren't as obvious as this person, but Chun Zhao could more or less tell what was special about them. This ship is so big. Rich people. King Tong, what are you looking at? A woman came to the man with oil paint on his face. Pian and King Tong were teammates. They were both spiritualists who had rushed over from other places. The others on the ship were the same, but they didn't have much money, so they teamed up and rented such a yacht. The rental of this yacht cost $8,000 a day, and it was expected to take 4 days, so it was $32,000. Ordinary spiritualists didn't have that much money. Of course, it was a good thing that they teamed up to rent a yacht, but the problem was that many spiritualists were a bit unruly. That ship. What? Do you also envy the life of the rich? Pian said with a smile. That's an ominous yacht, King Tong said. Pian looked surprised. He looked up and saw an Asian standing on the 3rd deck of the yacht. The Hydra. It's inevitable that it will attract bad luck to give its yacht such a name. I wonder if the person on that ship is also a spiritualist. King Tong also saw Chun Zhao. He also saw that Chun Zhao was looking at him. His condescending gaze made him very uncomfortable. You don't know how to enjoy yourself when you have money. You come here to take risks. I really don't know what you're thinking. Pian pursed his lips, but looking at the luxurious yacht in front of him, he couldn't help but look envious. Spiritualists were also humans, and humans also had emotions and desires. Who wouldn't want to have a good life? Chapter 1494. Although the small yacht passed by the Hydra, it was not a big yacht. However, there was no real interaction between the two. The spiritualists on the yacht envied the rich people on the Hydra, but they weren't real bandits, after all. There might be 1 or 2 spiritualists with bad intentions, but most of them were good-natured people. That's the spiritualist on the yacht, right? Fei Lai came to Chun Zhao's side and handed him a glass of juice. Yes, probably. Chun Zhao didn't think much of it. This route led directly to Arma Island. It wasn't surprising to see a spiritualist's boat here. At this time, Ma Island was already crowded with people. The land area was originally about 10 square kilometers, but now there were at least 100 people. The familiar spiritualists gathered together in 2s and 3s. There were also some eccentric spiritualists who hid in the forest to communicate with nature. In the beginning, Arma Island had been a trading island. It had been a transfer point for goods from California. At that time, shipping mainly relied on ships. Goods from Europe or slaves from Africa were all placed on this small island and then transferred to the big coastal towns on the west coast. However, after a few hundred years, the buildings on the island were already broken. Only some traces of the past could be seen, but it wasn't as busy as before, because it was unnaturally abandoned. Some exposed skeletons could even be found on the island. This island had once brought disaster and death because of Turin. There had also been a tragic supernatural war. The first traders and adventurers weren't willing to give up on this island, because to them Jima Island was very valuable. At that time, Los Angeles and San Francisco were only medium-sized towns. The main gathering place for European immigrants was on the East Coast in the other direction. Therefore, most trading ships were destined for Manhattan. If they docked at the West Coast, it would increase their shipping cycle. Therefore, they needed a West Coast distribution center like Arma Island to unload some of the goods, and then load some of the goods from Arma Island onto the ships. For the traders, Arma Island was a port that they couldn't lose. Therefore, to calm the disaster caused by Turin, the traders spent a lot of money and gathered a large number of spiritualists to clear out Turin. Of course, the result was predictable. Over the past 300 years, various organizations, forces, and individuals had gathered again and again. But the result was still the same. Gradually, people stopped trying. Because this was a hopeless war. On the contrary, the Turin became even more terrifying. Because the witches, wizards, and awakened who had died in battle had all become Turin slaves. They were far more dangerous than the normal Spectre crew. In the spirit world, an ordinary Spectre ship was already considered a disaster. But Durian was above the calamity level. Generally speaking, a Spectre ship cleanup operation would require a dozen or so witches to go around in a circle. Whether they succeeded or not, the difficulty was basically the same. However, Turin was different. In the beginning, there were only a few tens of witches, but now there were hundreds of them. The largest gathering of 300 spiritualists was a gathering. King Tong and Payan arrived at the island, and the other psychics also got off the boat. At this time, the colorful tents on the beach. King Tong frowned. Payan looked at King Tong and asked, "What's wrong?" "This won't do. We have no chance of winning." "Why?" "I think there are a lot of people." "It's not enough. I've studied several precedents of cleaning up Turin, and there are also some cases of successfully wiping out Spectre ships." King Tong said, 50% of the Spectre ships appear with a strong storm. Look at those people. They all stay on the coast. Once Turin arrives, the storm alone can cause them heavy casualties, and the number of people is far less than the number of people who can wipe out Turin. According to the information we received, Turin will arrive here tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. There should be more psychics who haven't gone to sea yet. Payan said, "It's said that more than 500 psychics have come to Los Angeles recently, so the people here are definitely not all." "Forget it. We'd better make our own preparations. We can't pin our hopes on others. Don't be so pessimistic. Among the psychics who came to Los Angeles this time, there are also many powerful ones, such as Ms. Tem Lien, Ms. Iskij. There are also many famous psychics outside North America. These people are indeed very strong, but there is no unified command. Everyone is fighting on their own. Can they wipe out that horrible Turin? In fact, you know in your heart that it's impossible to wipe out Turin in this battle," Payan said. King Tong stopped talking. In fact, she was not the only one. Many psychics who came to Roma Island knew that. It was impossible to achieve results with just one annihilation operation. In fact, on the route of Turin, all the stations were part of the ambush and annihilation operation. Roma Island was just the first stop. There were several more stations on the route where many psychics had gathered. To be honest, it's the first time I've participated in such a grand operation. Payan sounded a little excited. "You're still young. You haven't participated in the world-class operation in Huaxia 20 years ago. Did you also get your King Tong in that battle?" "Yes, it's the same as this operation. Through the Heroic Spirit Notebook, we recorded our achievements. However, the battle 20 years ago was even grander. It was led by China's Kunlun Mountain. Tens of thousands of spiritualists from all over the world gathered to face the 1,000 Goblin King, who had been sealed for 1,000 years. You definitely can't imagine how tragic and shocking that battle was. Was the Myriad Demon King very powerful? In fact, the Myriad Demon King did not come out of the seal. It was just that his demon aura leaked out and attracted thousands of demons. My eyeball was gouged out by a demon in that battle. Then, because of my achievements, I was rewarded with a special eyeball, which is my King Tong now. It's a pity that I was born 10 years too late. Otherwise, I would have been able to participate in that great battle. It's exciting to think about it. It's a pity that the spiritual world is getting weaker and weaker. According to the data of the international organization, compared with 20 years ago, even the active rate of the spiritual world in Huaxia has decreased by 20%. I don't know if there will be such a great battle in the future. What if there are no psychics in the future and there are big demons breaking the seal? Maybe the technology at that time can solve the problem. Chapter 1495. At present, human technology was already very powerful. The most powerful part was, of course, in the war weapons. Of course, they weren't omnipotent. For example, the ghost ship was something that modern war weapons couldn't solve. After all, the ships that the Turin had sunk were not only cargo ships, but also warships, modern warships. King Tong told Pian about the unparalleled battle 20 years ago. His tone was filled with sorrow, but there was also a trace of nostalgia. Yes, she was nostalgic about that battle. That might be the last glory of the spiritual world. In that battle, both the good and evil sides were surprisingly united. Facing the army of demons and monsters, they rose up to resist. For the outside world, it might be calm, but to the otherworldly spirit world, it was a soul-stirring scene. Page after page of climax after climax, magnificent chapters unfolded on a magnificent scale. In fact, many people had guessed the 23rd blood Mary's intention. The 23rd blood Mary wanted to use this matter to arouse the enthusiasm of the spiritual world. It might not be able to reach the epic level of the unparalleled battle 20 years ago, but it could at least ignite the enthusiasm of the members of the spiritual world. Whether it was good or evil, no one wanted to disappear like this. Even if she had to sacrifice herself, the 23rd blood Mary still wanted to illuminate the unknown path. Of course, not everyone had this kind of awareness. Most of the people still had the thought of taking advantage of the situation and participated in this operation. Or they just wanted to join in the fun. For example, Qin Zhao. But Qin Zhao wasn't in the mood to watch the fun. He was holding a shotgun and pointing it at the sky. "Get out of here! Get away!" Qin Zhao roared at a group of seagulls in the sky. Seagulls were mascots for sailors. They were gluttonous, bold, and liked to play pranks. For example, they could shit on a sailor's head. But every sailor was willing to treat them well. Because in the past, without the support of modern technology, sailing was very dangerous. Many times, they couldn't see land for months because they were lost. For sailors in that era, being lost meant despair. Only when they saw seagulls could they see hope. Because there were seagulls, there was land. Since some time, seagulls had become the mascots of sailors. However, Qin Zhao clearly didn't like these troublemakers, because they shit on Qin Zhao's deck. He just didn't want to shoot in front of Jerlin and Larissa, so he just used the gun to scare the seagulls. However, Qin Zhao was born with a curse. He would never be hit by a gun. The only time Qin Zhao had hit someone was when he pointed the gun at the person's temple last year. Don't think the seagulls don't understand. In fact, they are smarter than most birds. They knew what a gun was. A gray-blue seagull has never left and has been hovering over the Hydra. This grayish-blue seagull was about half the size of an ordinary seagull. However, it was quite fast, and the other seagulls were scared away. The grayish-blue seagull refused to leave. He swooped down several times in an attempt to snatch the meat on the table. Seagulls are also known as pirate birds. They can be said to do all kinds of bad things and all kinds of good things. They had done all sorts of things such as murder and arson, as well as things like turtle doves occupying magpies' nests. They could even prey on their own kind. In fact, in their eyes, as long as they were not as big as them, everything was on their menu. Qin Zhao didn't have a good impression of seagulls, especially after they shit above his boat. Just then, the grayish-blue seagull swooped down. Qin Zhao's eyes flashed. He had already rushed to the seagull and was about to grab it, but at that moment the seagull lifted the plate on the table and hit Qin Zhao. Then it rose into the air even faster. Qin Zhao gasped. "So fast!" His movements just now definitely surpassed the speed of sound, but he didn't manage to catch the damn bird. Phew! Scared me. I almost fell into the human's hands. Just then, Qin Zhao heard a voice. It was demon language. Qin Zhao raised his head and looked at the seagull. "Demon? Human? You can understand me? Where did you come from?" Qin Zhao asked. "I don't know. I appeared in the human world out of nowhere. Damn it, I want to know why I appeared in the human world too." and this body is too weak. It's so uncomfortable. Other than my speed, all my power is gone. The gray-blue seagull complained to itself. Not a demon originally in the human world. Had it just been summoned to the human world? But considering how weak it was, it should be very powerful in hell. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. Had he summoned it? But ever since King Kong, Qin Zhao hadn't summoned a demon servant of his own accord. What was up with this demon that had transformed into a seagull? Had he unintentionally developed some kind of emotion? What kind of demon are you? Human, if you acknowledge me as your master, I will tell you my name. Furthermore, I will bestow upon you endless wealth and power. Whoosh! Qin Zhao raised his hand. I order you in the name of your master to come down and kneel at my feet. Beg for my mercy and mercy. An invisible contract power immediately bound the seagull and pulled him onto the deck. Damn it! What's going on? Why do I have a contract with you? The seagull cursed. Had he really summoned it? Wow, bird. Just then, Jerlin ran over and grabbed the seagull on the ground. She opened her mouth and bit the seagull's wing. The seagull immediately fluttered and broke free from Jerlin. Wow! Jerlin suddenly burst into tears. Dad, bad bird. It hurts. Qin Zhao saw that the seagull's claws had made Jerlin bleed. Furious, Qin Zhao pointed at the seagull that had just flown up and roared, "Get down here!" Instantly, the seagull landed on the deck again. Qin Zhao went up and took out a small angelic crystal. Wow! Caw! Angel! The angelic crystal emitted a holy aura that made him feel as if his soul was burning. But his real body wasn't weak, so he wasn't purified yet. But precisely because his real body wasn't weak, his projection was also tenacious and didn't get destroyed. This caused him to suffer even longer. The seagull struggled and feathers fell everywhere. Only then did Qin Zhao take out the angelic crystal and throw the dying seagull onto the deck. This is your punishment for hurting my daughter. Despicable human, if this wasn't a projection, you'd be dead already. Do you know that? If this wasn't your projection but your real body, you'd be dead already. Do you know that? Chapter 1496. One was a demon, and the other was Qin Zhao. Both sides belonged to the category of unreasonable people. Stupid bird, tell me your name. I'm not stupid bird. I'm the noble Akira Basin. Oh, isn't this a little demon? Samuel jumped onto the fence and looked down at the seagull. Samuel, you know him? Samuel? You're Samuel's subordinate? No, this gaze, this aura. All of Basin's feathers were standing on end, just like how Beelzebub and Raymond had been when they first saw Samuel. Lower your lowly head. How can a lowly, worthless piece of shit like you, who doesn't even have a subordinate, call me by my name? Samuel was as arrogant and vicious as ever. In Qin Zhao's and Feilai's eyes, Samuel was just a little kitten. But in the demon's eyes, even a kitten's image and an insignificant aura could destroy the world. It was still as terrifying as if it could destroy the world. Please forgive lowly servant Akira Basin. My ignorance and stupidity have offended the great king of wrath. Basin dared to be so rude to Qin Zhao. Even though he'd sensed the existence of the contract, he still boasted shamelessly. That was because he wanted Qin Zhao to kill him now. That way, Qin Zhao wouldn't be able to bind him. An extremely weak projection was of no use to him. Moreover, this projection was bound by the contract. But Samuel was different. If he dared to talk nonsense to Samuel here, or even show the slightest bit of disrespect, Samuel would chase his real body to the ends of the earth and hell. Right now, Basin only felt that this place was terrifying. Why was the king of wrath's projection here? It seemed to be very familiar with this human. Was the king of wrath also a contract demon, servant, summoned by this human? This was impossible. No one could sign a contract with the seven kings. Even if it was just an insignificant projection, it would still represent a great demon king. But if it wasn't a contract demon servant, How did the King of Wrath's projection come to the human world? Samuel, stop acting cool, Qin Zhao said. Tell me, what's this thing? Little devil, a demon of mischief. They like to prank others and enjoy watching a good show. In hell, wherever there is a war, there will be them. They like to mock the losers after the war is over and plunder the wealth and equipment of the losers. They are the most unpopular demons in hell. Samuel's eyes were filled with disgust as he spoke. That's right. Qin Zhao rubbed his chin. Did he summon this little demon because he came to watch the show? At this moment, Basin was lying on the ground like an obedient baby, without any of his previous arrogant attitude. But this had nothing to do with Qin Zhao. He was only afraid of Samuel. The title of the great demon king was basically a passport in hell, and it was quite useful. Qin Zhao went up and kicked Basin. Since you're my demon servant now, you better remember your identity and my rules. If you dare to disobey my orders, your projection will have to eat angelic crystals every day. Samuel will also take special care of your real body. Basin looked at Qin Zhao with a smile on his face. Do you want me to go find his main body now? I'll stuff his skin with angelic crystals, and I won't let him die. I can even place an undying curse on him so that he'll suffer eternal torture and destruction. Samuel wasn't a torturer, but his violent nature represented cruelty and madness. Even if he was just scaring Basin, he still showed his cruel side. Actually, Basin wasn't an ordinary little demon. He was a mid-level demon, which was already stronger than 99% of demons. For example, Black Ma and White Ma were subordinates of greed, so they were only low-level demons. The difference was obvious. Basin was so scared that he peed his pants. The King of Wrath's words were like an imperial edict to him. Was his life as a demon going to end just like that? Master, I won't do it again. Please forgive Basin's sins. Qin Zhao knew so many demons. There were strong, despicable, greedy, and all kinds of demons. But there were no brave demons. All demons were the same. Cowards. No matter how arrogant they were when they appeared, they would always cower. But when the situation wasn't right, they would definitely cower. Of all the demons Qin Zhao had summoned, the only one who was obedient was Carrie. But she only acted obedient in front of Qin Zhao. In fact, she was very cunning, especially toward Beelzebub, Raymond, and Black Ma and White Ma. Are you dead? If you're not, get up. If you dare to scratch my daughter again, I'll let you swim in the sea of holy light. Qin Zhao tossed a dozen angelic crystals of various sizes onto the deck. Samuel shrieked and ran away immediately. Basin, on the other hand, did not escape. In an instant, his body curled up into a ball. Ah, the feathers on Basin's body were already burning. These weren't the small angelic crystal shards from before. The angelic crystals were all bigger than the previous one. Basin had never seen so many angelic crystals in his life, and most of them were shockingly big. Even if he didn't touch them, just the holy aura they emitted was enough to make him burn. Seeing that it was about time, Qin Zhao put away the angelic crystals. He controlled a ball of seawater and smashed it onto Basin. Qin Zhao squatted down before Jerlin and held her hand gently. He touched the shallow wound and blew on it. Baby, does it still hurt? Jerlin wiped away her tears. Yes, a little. Hey, he's yours now. You can do whatever you want. He won't dare to catch you again, Qin Zhao said. I can do whatever I want. Jerlin was still a bit afraid of Basin. Yes, he's called Basin. No, he's called Bad Bird. Then Bad Bird, Qin Zhao said, nodding. Jerlin carefully walked to Basin's side. As expected, he didn't dare to attack her anymore. After being threatened by Qin Zhao and Samuel, he now knew that it wasn't easy to survive in the human world. Bad Bird, do you still dare to catch me? Qin Zhao looked at the dazed Basin and stepped on his wing. My daughter asked you a question. Don't you understand? I don't. What's little master talking about? Fuck, you can't learn a foreign language, even if you come to the human world. In 3 days, you have to learn to at least understand the basic human language. If you can't, please remember this book's domain name, 9 Heavens Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1497. Darling, are you sure that little seagull won't be eaten by little Jerlin? Phalai looked at Basin worriedly. Little Jerlin grabbed Basin's neck roughly. Basin wanted to struggle and resist, but he was afraid that he would hurt little Jerlin. Basin wasn't as big as a normal seagull, but he was still around 60 centimeters when he spread his wings. He was definitely a big bird. Little Jerlin was a child who didn't know her own limits. She had a terrifying trait. Even when Princess was as big as her, she had tried to eat her before. Qin Zhao suspected that little Jerlin had inherited his gluttonous bloodline, but little Jerlin always liked to use Basin to measure her mouth. She would grab Basin's neck and stuff it into her mouth. "It's fine," Qin Zhao said, unconcerned, "as long as he doesn't hurt little Jerlin." Thankfully, little Jerlin's teeth weren't fully grown yet, and she didn't have much strength. Little Jerlin's unconventional hobby was similar to that of most children. Children between 1 and 2 years old would stuff whatever they felt they could into their mouths. According to research organizations, more than 10,000 babies died every year because they accidentally swallowed something. Babies judged and learned about the world through their taste buds. So, Chun Zhao never stopped little Jerlin from stuffing things into her mouth. Even if it was a rock, a child would spit it out after realizing that it couldn't be eaten. Of course, if it was something that wasn't too big or small, it might get stuck in the throat. So, Qin Zhao and Phalai wouldn't put such things in the house. Even if they did, they would put it away and put it somewhere Jerlin couldn't reach. Almost all the pets in the house had been attacked by little Jerlin's demonic mouth. "Save me. Master, save me. King Samuel, save me." Unfortunately, everyone turned a blind eye to Basin's cries for help. On Noma Island, the people who came today either had nothing to do or needed to prepare in advance. Pian looked at the formation pattern drawn by Cinnabar on the ground, somewhat confused. "King Tong, what's this magic formation? How come I've never seen it before?" "This is the 4 symbols demon subduing formation of the Eastern Dragon Tiger Mountain sect. It's a very powerful Eastern magic formation. You know Eastern spells?" "I once participated in an Eastern warlock crash course," King Tong said, "because my eyeball came from a demon's eyeball. Later, it was refined into a divine eye by an Eastern warlock, so I need Eastern magic to activate it. In the next few years, I have been active in the East. I have to say that the spiritual world in the East is very active. You can't imagine it at all. Maybe the beggars, sitting on the street, all have powerful magic power. How do I use this 4 symbols demon subduing formation? Generally speaking, the 4 symbols exorcism formation requires 4 warlocks to operate, and then the formation will transform into the 4 symbols guardian divine beasts, azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise." King Tong said, "But because I have King Tong, I can activate it alone. Through the refraction of my divine eyes, I can transform the 4 symbols divine beasts. Then what should I do? When the battle starts, the 4 symbols demon subduing formation will gradually be depleted, so you need to be a tinkerer. Once a part of the formation is missing, you must immediately fill in the missing part. Otherwise, the 4 symbols demon subduing formation will gradually weaken." Although Pian and King Tong were partners, Pian belonged to King Tong's support staff. Pian had more powerful magic power than King Tong, but she was not good at attacking and fighting. It was not until she met King Tong that she was able to show her talent. King Tong's magic knowledge was very profound, and it could be said that she had learned a lot of things. She knew all kinds of magic and spells from both the East and the West, and she also had an eye that was almost a divine weapon. But the disadvantage was also quite obvious. That was, her magic power was insufficient. Therefore, Pian was like a mobile power source for King Tong. When King Tong's magic power was insufficient, Pian was responsible for guiding the magic power to King Tong. At this moment, a group of 4 spiritualists appeared next to Pian and King Tong. Moreover, it seemed that they did not intend to leave after arriving here. They also planned to set up camp here, or to use this place as a position. This made Pian and King Tong dissatisfied. Pian shouted with dissatisfaction, "Hey, can't you see that there are people here? Yo, is there anyone here?" There were 2 women and 3 men in this group of spiritualists, but judging from their faces, it was obvious that they did not know how to communicate well. "Do you see the 5 of us?" One of the women looked at Pian and King Tong and said, "If you know what's good for you, get out of here." "Hey, there are still packages here." These people suddenly found that there were still a few unopened bags in the place they had chosen. Pian and King Tong frowned. Weren't those packages these people's? That was to say, before the 2 of them arrived, someone had put the things here? Suddenly, a figure fell from the sky. Everyone was frightened by this figure. Could he fly? No matter what means he relied on, he was definitely a strong-level figure. Jalanash looked at the people in front of her and said, "These are my things, and this is my territory. If you know what's good for you, get out of here." One of Jalanash's palms was burning with flames, and the other was holding a ball of cold air. Pian exclaimed, "Be careful!" The witch, who had been standing behind Jalanash, suddenly shot 2 wooden thorns at Jalanash's back. However, when the wooden thorns hit Jalanash's back, they did not penetrate it and fell directly to the ground. Jalanash was furious. She hadn't done anything yet, but these guys dared to make a move first. Jalanash waved her left hand, and a ball of cold air burst out. Oh no! The witch reacted very quickly. Sensing the danger, she hurriedly flew out. The cold air hit the tree trunk behind her. In an instant, the tree, which was more than 10 meters high, turned into an ice sculpture. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What a powerful ice magic! The witch was also frightened. If she hadn't dodged just now, she would have turned into an ice sculpture. Seeing that their companions were attacked, the other 4 were about to take action immediately. But the next moment, countless vines suddenly grew out of the feet of the 5 people. In just 3 seconds, the 5 spiritualists were all tied up like dumplings. Morad came out of the woods and asked, "Jalanash, who are they? Are those 2 with them? Should we tie them up too?" "No, they're not with us." Jalanash looked at Pian and King Tong and nodded slightly to express her gratitude for Pian's reminder. At this time, Lit, Grove, Bona, Giselle, and Moral came back. "Why did you all leave? Leaving our luggage here without anyone looking after it." Chapter 1498. I'm going to pick fruits. Lit Grove held up the 2 coconuts in his hands. "I'm going fishing." Bona picked up a big fish. "I'm going to look for water." Giselle picked up a can of packaged pure water. "Did you find this in that river? And it's packaged?" Jalanash was speechless. "I asked for it from someone else," Giselle said. Mo Air hesitated for a long time, and everyone's eyes fell on him. Mo Air hesitated. He had gone out to play. This was the first time he had camped in the wild with so many people. But he couldn't say that. After thinking about it, he explained, "I think we didn't bring enough things, so I asked others to come and steal our things. Then we could rob them." Pian and King Tong felt a chill. What kind of person was this? All right, throw these guys far away. Jalanash was acting like a big sister. Usually, it was not her turn to make decisions in the association. However, in this place, she was experienced, powerful, and had high prestige. Of course, she would be the boss. Although Mo Air and Morad had the same qualifications as her, they were relatively low-key. They wouldn't compete with Jalanash for the boss. Jalanash looked at King Tong and Pian and walked up to them. "Hello, are you also camping here?" Pian looked back and said, "We set up a magic formation here. We didn't know that someone was here." "Oh, it doesn't matter. We're just camping here. We don't need to make any special preparations. If you set up a magic formation here, we won't disturb you. Pian and King Tong used this place as a battlefield, so they needed a certain amount of space in this area. They had the same purpose as the previous group of people, so there was a conflict of interest between them. After all, no one wanted to be robbed. As for Jalanash and the others, none of them was a psychic who was good at positional warfare. Moreover, they were fighting on their own. There was a distance from the coastline, and they planned to go directly to the front line to fight. So there was no problem of killing. Pian and King Tong no longer had any objections. After all, the other party had a large number of people and was strong. Since there was no substantial conflict of interest, there was no need for one party to leave. Of course, King Tong was not really afraid of Jalanash and the others. If they really fought, he had some confidence in himself. However, after getting along with them, Pian and King Tong found that Jalanash and the others were very easy to talk to. They even felt that these young people were like big kids. In fact, Moore was a big kid. He had just turned 16 not long ago. Even Jalanash and Morad were only in their early 20s. Among them, Lit Grove was actually the oldest, but he had the least experience. Although he had the halo of being Chen's student, he didn't have many privileges in the association. What he had, so did the others. King Tong was now in her 40s and Pian was in his early 30s. In their eyes, Jalanash and the others were all children. What organization are you from? Or a small gang? Or from the same family? Pian asked. We're organized, Jalanash answered briefly, but didn't give any more information. Both Pei and King Tong were experienced, but they only asked one question. If they continued to ask, once they touched on the secret part, it might make them vigilant. If they were willing to tell them, it would be their business. Did your superiors just let you out? Yes, and they didn't let us join hands. They asked us to fight on our own, saying that they wanted to test our actual combat ability. You guys should be the focus of your organization's training, right? Your organization is willing to let you out without giving you any protection measures? We can protect ourselves, and we have something to protect ourselves, Moore said. Jalanash glanced at Moore, and Moore immediately realized that he had said too much. If the other party was up to no good and found out what treasures they had, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't have evil intentions. Fortunately, Pian and King Tong didn't have any malicious intentions, so they didn't continue to talk about this topic. Mr. King Tong, why are your eyes golden? What kind of magic is it? Lit Grove asked curiously. Speaking of this golden pupil, it's time to tell my story. King Tong liked to tell people her story. Pian, on the other hand, was a fan of King Tong, and she liked to listen to King Tong's past experience the most. Listening to King Tong's past experience, everyone couldn't help but daydream, and their eyes lit up. China? I want to see it too. My teacher is from China. He's the best spiritualist I've ever seen. No one is better than him in this world, Lit Grove said. That's right. I want to see it too. Of course. King Tong and Pian would not refute or correct him. In their eyes, a young man like Lit Grove might not have had much contact with spiritualists. Therefore, it was not surprising that he would worship a powerful spiritualist and regard him as the most powerful spiritualist in the world. For example, when Pian first met King Tong, she also thought that King Tong was the most powerful spiritualist in the world. But later, when she had more contact with the outside world and more spiritualists, she found that the world was bigger and more wonderful than she had imagined. Of course, there were many spiritualists who were more powerful than King Tong. King Tong was very powerful. Coupled with her golden divine eyes, she could be invincible in most of the battles. But she was not invincible in the world. She might not even be ranked in the top 10,000. Didn't your teacher come? He should be. I guess he's watching us from somewhere now, Lit Grove said. Suddenly, he felt a chill on his scalp. He wiped it with his palm and immediately changed his expression. Oh, that damn seagull actually shat on my head. Everyone stayed away from Lit Grove, trying to hold back their laughter. If there is a prophet here at this time, he'll say that you will get good luck, King Tong said with a smile. Will it bring good luck to be shat on my head by a seagull? Seagulls are the auspicious birds of sailors and pirates. You know, every time the Vikings go to sea, they will take the initiative to smear the fun of seagulls on their faces. They think that it can bring good luck. Well, is that really the case? Lit Grove took King Tong's word seriously. Chapter 1499. Do you have guns? Do any of you have guns? Lit Grove was about to go crazy. He had gone to take a shower 6 or 7 times. Every time, as soon as he took a shower, he would fly in the sky. Who could stand it? Most importantly, the same seagull had thrown him down 6 or 7 times. Is this seagull constipated? Even if it's constipated, it won't just stare at Grove. Bona tried not to laugh. This is obviously abnormal, Pian said. She was the most experienced and meticulous among the group. King Tong hadn't realized it yet, but Pian had already realized the problem. Do you know anyone who can control animals? Pian asked. Is it an enemy? King Tong frowned at Pian's reminder. It's not an enemy. If it was an enemy, it wouldn't just be flying high in the sky. This is obviously a prank. Moreover, it's purposely reminding them of its existence. If it was an enemy, it would only move quietly and not so blatantly. Is it our teacher? Looks like it's the president. But when did the president have a pet seagull? Seeing that Jalanash and the others had already come to a conclusion, Pian asked, It's not an enemy, right? No. Is your teacher an animal tamer or a druid? Neither. My teacher is an animal tamer. Pian and King Tong clearly didn't believe that an animal tamer could tame a seagull so obediently, unless it was an animal tamer's mind control over beasts or a druid's ability to talk to nature harmoniously. Basin was flying in the sky. Pranking was his instinct. Chun Zhao was observing Jalanash and the others through Basin's vision. This was also something Chen Zhao had discovered not long ago. He realized that he could share vision with Basin. This was good. He didn't need to land on the island to observe Jalanash and the others. If they were in danger, he could help them in time. The yacht wandered 20 nautical miles away from Arma Island and sailed around it. Arma Island had a deep water port, but most of the water was shallow, so the Hydra couldn't get too close. In comparison, the Hydra is a large ship. If it is close to Arma Island in a straight line, it is possible, but if it is around, it is easy to hit the reef. Chun Zhao didn't want the Hydra to hit a reef on its first voyage, so he kept some distance. Chun Zhao leaned against the railing on the deck. Fei Lai was testing the water with little Larissa. Little Larissa instinctively slacked off, just like little Jerlin. However, the difference was that little Jerlin had learned to swim in Mirror Lake. But now little Larissa was in the sea. The calm Mirror Lake could not be compared to the surface of the sea. Even when there was no wind, the waves were still coming and going. Thus, Fei Lai did not dare to let go of little Larissa. Just like how Chen Zhao had carried little Jerlin in the past, she held little Larissa's belly with her hands. He had to admit that these two sisters were really the reincarnation of fish. As soon as he came into contact with the water, his hands and feet began to move. Little Larissa was quite excited, but when she saw her sister swimming in front of her in all kinds of positions, little Larissa's interest was gone. She pouted and was about to cry. Standing on the deck, Chen Zhao's face darkened. Jerlin was clearly showing off. Jerlin had been in contact with water for 10 months. She soaked in Mirror Lake for 2 to 3 hours every day. Even an adult might not be able to swim faster than her. Chen Zhao secretly controlled a wave to push little Jerlin away so that she would not swim in front of her sister. Just then, a small yacht approached. The people on the yacht all looked at Chen Zhao with evil intentions. Even from a few hundred meters away, Chen Zhao could feel their gazes. Fei Lai, come up. Let's see if our lunch is ready. Seeing the yacht, Fei Lai understood. Little Jerlin, come here. We're going up. Ow. Like a little mermaid, little Jerlin swam to Fei Lai's side. Then she climbed up the ladder, while Fei Lai carried little Larissa onto the yacht. Darling, don't dirty our boat. Okay. Qin Zhao kissed Feilai. Then, Feilai brought the two children into the cabin. Just then, the yacht behind them had come over. Half a meter away, the people on the other boat had already jumped onto the Hydra. Hi, I'm Dawson. A big guy wearing a headscarf and a vest walked up to Qin Zhao with a seemingly friendly smile and reached out his hand. However, Qin Zhao did not reach out. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked at Dawson with his upper body bare. Then he looked at the people who had come with Dawson. This is my territory. Please leave this place. At sea, if a stranger jumped onto the other person's boat without any prior notice, there was no doubt that they had encountered pirates with evil intentions. Without a doubt, they must have encountered pirates with evil intentions. This boat is so big and beautiful. Dawson looked around, his face full of envy. He ignored Qin Zhao's order to leave. He looked left and right as if he were Qin Zhao's old friend. Dawson's group had already seen the Hydra. It had been wandering around Arma Island for a long time. According to their observation, there were not many crew members on the yacht. There were only a man and a woman. So they thought of something. They were not professional pirates. They were just occasional guests. It's my honor to be a guest on this yacht. Just then, one of Dawson's men wanted to enter the cabin, but the next moment a white shadow flashed by. Snow White had already pushed the man to the ground. Ever since Qin Zhao had brought Snow White home, he had demonized it. Now, Snow White was also a hybrid demon. Snow White was more than twice as big as before. It was about the size of a jaguar. The others immediately took a few steps back. They were spiritualists, but they were not good at dealing with wild beasts. Moreover, they did not have guns in their hands. They thought that magic was enough. Snow White, bite off his throat. Snow White would not hurt people on its own, nor would it bite them to death. But once Bai Chen gave the order, Snow White would absolutely obey. Even Walter could not compare to it in terms of wildness. Walter had grown up with humans. Its mission and self-awareness was to protect, not harm. But Snow White was different. It and Princess did not have the concept of not killing people. Dawson immediately took out his dagger, wanting to shoot Snow White. But just then, someone grabbed his neck from behind. Chapter 1500. Dawson turned his head with difficulty. He saw that Qin Zhao still had one hand in his pocket and the other around his neck. Thorn skin, rock body, strength, multiplication, beast frenzy. Qin Zhao felt a sharp pain in his palm. Then Dawson broke free from Qin Zhao's grasp. Qin Zhao looked at his palm. There was no wound. Why did it hurt? Dawson was an enhancer spiritualist, and not just one type. Twisting his neck, Dawson grinned at Qin Zhao. Surprised, right, Mr. Druid? Before approaching the Hydra, he'd already known that Qin Zhao was a spiritualist. After all, Qin Zhao couldn't be an ordinary person wandering around a deserted island like Amarantha. So he'd been prepared for battle. When he saw Princess on the third deck and Snow White, who'd pounced out of the cabin, he was sure that Qin Zhao was a beast druid. The others revealed their real weapons too. Of course, their real weapons weren't guns, but magic tools or spells. Looks like you're an enhancer too. Dawson snickered. Qin Zhao's grip on the back of his neck just now still felt uncomfortable. But Dawson wasn't afraid anymore. Thorn skin could counter all enhancers. At least when the difference in power wasn't absolute, it had an absolute advantage. Snow White, just bite it to death. Throw the body into the ocean. Don't eat it. Spit out the meat in your mouth, Qin Zhao ordered. Qin Zhao was strict with his pets at home. At first, he didn't even want them to kill people. Later, he gotten angry a few times and let them kill. But he definitely couldn't eat people. This was an instinctive human rejection. In the natural world, any intelligent creature would reject its own kind. Snow White dragged the body with the broken neck to the edge of the deck and tossed it into the ocean. At that moment, a shark leaped up and dragged the corpse into the sea. Chen Zhao's face darkened. He'd forgotten about the 5 tiger generals. They thought that he'd fed them. Forget it, I'll just eat it. When Dawson and the others saw the shark eat their companion's body, their expressions were unnatural. Boss, he fed Stan to the sharks, so we'll feed him to the sharks, Dawson said with a dark expression. Boss, I saw that the woman on the boat was very beautiful. A malicious smile appeared on the faces of the others. Suddenly the person who spoke felt a sharp pain in his neck, and a cold light flashed. Raymond, who had been curled up on the railing of the second deck, made his move. More accurately, he moved his mouth. Raymond was now 3.5 meters long. He still didn't have the physique of a python, but he was definitely stronger and more agile than a python of the same size in the natural world. Raymond bit the man's neck and lifted him up. At this moment, King Kong also came out of the cabin. King Kong, go in. We don't need you here. What a joke. King Kong had the strength of dozens of tons just by casually moving its arm, and it did not know how to control its strength. If he smashed the deck, he would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in repair fees. Kill this guy first. Dawson could see that none of the animals here were ordinary. Moreover, all of them were extremely murderous. Once they made a move, it would be a life. Take that giant snake, for example. It didn't look thick, but it had amazing strength. He bit his own hand and lifted it into the air. This bite force and strength were probably even stronger than pythons of the same length. And his lightning-like speed was something that pythons couldn't compare to. One of them secretly cast a curse at Chen Zhao. But when the curse reached Chen Zhao, it disappeared immediately. Boss, my curse is useless. Let me. Another person jumped out. His tone was very confident. He took a deep breath and breathed at Chen Zhao. A mouthful of poisonous mist surged toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao waved his hand. He wasn't afraid of poison, but could a glutton be poisoned? Chen Zhao was afraid of the guy's tone. Scram! Chen Zhao only punched, but the person who had spat out the poisonous mist had already exploded. Dawson's pupils constricted. He could vaguely see the shadow of a fist. If Chen Zhao released the shadow with all his strength, they would see hundreds of fist shadows. But Chen Zhao only punched once. It was like a single frame of film. The human eye couldn't capture more than 27 frames per second of a single image. For example, when watching a movie, if it was less than 27 frames per second, there would be stuttering. If it was more than 27 frames per second, there would be brain fatigue because the brain couldn't process the image. Simply put, the brain couldn't keep up with the speed of the image. Therefore, the standard for modern movies was 27 frames per second. Chen Zhao's punch was much faster than 27 frames per second. It was also an instant, not a continuous image. It would be strange if these people could see it. Chen Zhao grinned. Oh no, Feilai said not to dirty the boat. Dawson was starting to doubt whether Chen Zhao was an enhancer. If he wasn't, then Chen Zhao's strength was a bit shocking. But if he wasn't, how did he make one of his companions explode from a distance? He couldn't remember how an enhancer could hurt someone from a distance. Could it be that he cultivated another element? If it was a witch, he would believe it. After all, witches always had a surplus of magic power. But if it was a wizard, his magic power would be used up after a few spells. What was the point of learning another element? He might as well practice the spell he was best at. The spell just now was really powerful. It made a person explode instantly, but he couldn't use it too often. Otherwise, he would have killed everyone on his side long ago. Go together, Dawson ordered. But he didn't go up himself. Instead, he had his subordinates go up. Chen Zhao suddenly raised his hand and a person flew into the air. Everyone's attention was attracted by the person. They watched as he flew more than 10 meters in the air and glided in a perfect parabola. Then, Lao Guan jumped out of the sea. Accompanied by the person's scream, he died in the shark's mouth. Come, let's see who wants to be fed to the sharks next. Chen Zhao had a faint smile. From the beginning to the end, Qin Zhao had one hand in his pocket. Damn, nameless fog, go die! A cloud of fog enveloped Qin Zhao. He could feel that the nameless fog's magic seemed to be corrosive. Qin Zhao didn't feel anything, but he didn't want his boat to be contaminated. The mouth of gluttony opened and swallowed the fog. Chapter 1501. Another person charged over. Qin Zhao grabbed the person's head. Mist shot out of his palm and poured into the person's mouth. Then, the person's mouth started to corrode. The person started to struggle and reach out for help. Qin Zhao saw that this wasn't going to work. It would be disgusting if he didn't beat the person up. He lifted the person's feet and threw them into the sea. At the same time, he ordered the 5 tiger generals to stay away from the corpse. Don't get sick from eating it. Even the seawater couldn't stop the corpse from rotting. Clearly, the nameless mist wasn't anything good, seeing that Qin Zhao actually ignored the mist and even absorbed it. Then he spat it into his companion's mouth. Everyone's expressions changed. Who's next to be fed to the sharks? No one wanted to go up anymore. Everyone looked at their boss, Dawson. Dawson could only bite the bullet and go up. Sir, actually we came with good intentions. We didn't want to have a conflict with you. Your pet attacked us first. Dawson could only lie with his eyes wide open, even though he knew that basically no one would believe his words. Oh, Qin Zhao replied casually, if that's the case, can you go back to your yacht now? Dawson's heart skipped a beat. If it were him, he would definitely kill all of them with absolute power. But Qin Zhao didn't do that. Could it be that his magic power had reached the bottom? That's right. He'd killed so many people and had to control so many animals, including the sharks in the sea. His magic power must have run out. Dawson looked at Qin Zhao calmly with a smile. But you killed so many of our people. I can't just do nothing, right? Qin Zhao suddenly moved. The next moment he appeared before one of them. His 5 fingers pierced through the person's neck. Then, Qin Zhao lifted his arm and threw the person into the sea, attracting the sharks to fight for food. Look, I killed another one of your people. What do you want? Everyone bristled and backed away in fear. Dawson's expression changed. He also took 2 steps back, subconsciously. Damn it. Qin Zhao had only used one hand from beginning to end. It wasn't that he didn't have any strength left. He hadn't used his full strength from beginning to end. Sir, I'm sorry for my attitude earlier. You're welcome. Smiling, Qin Zhao flung the blood off his hand. But since you're not willing to return to your ship, I don't think I need your ship anymore. Fist shadow. In an instant, Qin Zhao threw out 100 punches. Bang! Bang! Under the astonished and horrified gazes of Dawson and the others, the yacht was twisted and deformed before sinking into the water as scrap metal. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. It was obvious that they had provoked someone they shouldn't have. As a guest of this ship, I've always been very tolerant. Now, do you want to be beaten up by me, or jump into the sea to feed the sharks? Tolerance. Is this what you call tolerance? Dawson gritted his teeth. There might still be a chance. He still had his thorny skin. Dawson charged at Qin Zhao and opened his arms. He wanted to use his thorny skin to counterattack. To be honest, Qin Zhao had already sensed Dawson's strangeness. Actually, Qin Zhao wanted to try Dawson's strange spell. But the point was that Dawson was a big, rough man. This made Qin Zhao's idea of trying disappear. Qin Zhao grabbed Dawson's shoulder and squeezed it tightly. Dawson immediately felt intense pain. He grabbed Qin Zhao's arm with all his might, trying to hurt Qin Zhao through his thorny skin like before. But this time, Qin Zhao didn't let go. The thorny skin couldn't be seen, but it was indeed there. Qin Zhao could feel invisible thorns piercing his skin. However, this invisible attack didn't do much damage to Qin Zhao. The first time was an accident, but as long as he was mentally prepared, Qin Zhao didn't even feel pain. Is it fun? Ah. Qin Zhao crushed Dawson's collarbone. even with his thorny skin, rock body, strength multiplier, and beast frenzy. Even though his body was several times stronger than a normal person's, Dawson was still as fragile as a piece of paper before Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao squeezed lightly and Dawson's shoulder exploded. Suddenly, the mouth of Gluttony sensed an appetite. Huh. Was the mouth of Gluttony interested in such a weak spiritualist? After all, the mouth of Gluttony wasn't even interested in dragons. Qin Zhao didn't restrain the mouth of Gluttony. It bit off Dawson's left shoulder. Ah! Dawson fell to the ground, moaning in pain. The mouth of Gluttony was digesting Dawson's flesh. The mouth of Gluttony wasn't interested in Dawson's magic power. Dawson's magic power was probably less than 1/10,000th of Qin Zhao's. Both quality and quantity were meaningless to Qin Zhao. What the mouth of Gluttony was really interested in was Dawson's bloodline. Qin Zhao closed his eyes and felt the changes that came from his right arm and then spread to his entire body. There were obvious changes, but Qin Zhao's overall strength didn't increase much. It seemed like his strength had increased by less than 1%, but his defense seemed to have increased quite a bit. Qin Zhao didn't expect such a useless person to be helpful to him. Soon, Dawson didn't move anymore. After all, his entire shoulder had been bitten off by the mouth of Gluttony. He'd already lost a lot of blood and died from his injuries. Demon! You demon! Qin Zhao chuckled and finally took his left hand out of his pocket. Qin Zhao raised his arms and controlled the seawater through the small world. The waves surged over the deck and the boat tilted. The remaining people were all thrown into the sea. Together with the bloodstains on the deck and Dawson's corpse, they all rushed into the sea. Ah, help, help. I don't want to die. Soon, the sea was dyed red with blood. 5 sharks were eating and strangling the people who had fallen into the water. Qin Zhao still had a smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. Just then, another yacht came over. Qin Zhao looked at it. At the same time, he made the nearby seawater flow faster so that the redness on the surface dissipated. A blonde woman in black tights stood at the bow of the yacht. When the yacht approached, she didn't jump onto the hydra. Instead, she called out, "Sir, hello." "Hi, how can I help you?" Qin Zhao asked, looking up. "Sir, did you see a yacht? I mean a yacht that looks like it has a couple of not-so-friendly passengers." "Sorry, I didn't see it. Is it your friend?" Please remember this book's domain name. 9 Heavens, Godly Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1502. Really? Sorry to bother you. The blonde woman smiled softly and ordered the yacht to leave without making contact with the hydra. At this time, a rough man walked over from the blonde woman's side. His arms looked like he was wearing wool pants, and there was a devil pattern tattooed on them. When we located Dawson's yacht. It's obviously in that sea area. That man is obviously suspicious. Why don't you expose him?" The rough man said discontentedly, "Anyone who can appear in this sea area is not an ordinary person." Wen Kusig smoothed her long blonde hair. "There is no doubt that Dawson used some magic to hide the yacht. We don't know what the man has to do with Dawson. With our current strength, we're not sure if we can defeat Dawson. Not to mention that there is a man with unknown strength. To be honest, that man gives me a very dangerous feeling." One Kusig held a small monitor with a very obvious point on it, which kept indicating the target's location. In the evening, when is Dawson's boat still there? Well, according to the signal, Dawson's boat has been in the same place and has not moved. "Should we go and take a look?" the rough man asked. When Kusig hesitated slightly. She had fought with Dawson for 10 years, and she knew how cunning the man was. He was like a crocodile, lurking under the water surface and then giving the enemy a fatal blow. Could it be a trap? When Kusig asked worriedly. "We are not prey," the rough man said. "Okay." When Kusig ordered to turn around and go back to the location of the signal source. "The big yacht is gone. I didn't see Dawson's boat either. Strange, the signal is clearly here. Could it be that he has found the source of the signal? It's impossible to find it. That's the masterpiece of the High Witch. Although Dawson is cunning, he is not strong enough. Just then, a crew member ran over to Wink Sieg and the burly man. Miss Winku, Captain, our ship's sonar detected a metal reaction more than 30 meters underwater. Metal reaction? Like a shipwreck. Sonar detection was a very common piece of equipment for sailing. The sonar instruments on general ships were mainly used to monitor the depth of the seabed. Through the feedback of sound waves, coupled with computer calculations, it was possible to accurately calculate the depth of the seabed, whether there were reefs, and so on. Moreover, sonar detection could also detect whether there were hidden resources in the deep sea. After the sonar was transmitted to the bottom of the sea or other objects, the feedback from different objects would be different. For example, metals or large creatures could be detected by sonar. This is Dawson's boat? Wink Sieg's expression changed. The burly man frowned. He discovered the mark on the ship. So he deliberately sank the ship? Send 2 divers down to check. Half an hour later, the diver came up to report. Miss Wink, Captain, we found a completely damaged yacht underwater. It's Dawson's yacht. The diver handed the camera to Wink Sieg. We found a body in the yacht. It's the captain of Dawson's yacht. There was no one else. The yacht must have been damaged in a very sudden situation, and it deformed and sank in a very short time. So the captain of the yacht didn't have time to escape. Wink Sieg and the captain looked at the image in the camera. Rode, can you see what damaged the yacht? No, it doesn't look familiar. It was damaged by firearms, more like a big hammer. Look at these dents. But I can't imagine what kind of ship would be equipped with such a machine at sea. The attack was sudden, so it wasn't Dawson's doing. He didn't discover the mark on the yacht. They met an enemy other than us. But there were no other bodies on the yacht. Where are Dawson's men? Dawson has a lot of men, so there should be more bodies. Even if the yacht was washed away by the current, it's impossible that all the bodies can't be found. Rode was silent for a while. Unless there's one possibility. Dawson and his men weren't on the yacht when it was attacked. That is to say, Dawson and his men are still alive. Maybe, but it's more likely that they're dead, Rode said. Why? What's the evidence? I can't think of any machine or weapon that could damage such a huge yacht, so I'm leaning toward magic. Dawson messed with someone he shouldn't have messed with. That person or a group of people killed Dawson and his men in a rage and destroyed Dawson's yacht. Who could have done this? I don't know, Rode said. Everything is just speculation. Plus, there are too many spiritualists on Nightmare Island. There are even a few world-famous spiritualists. So I'm not sure if they did it. Could it be the man on the super yacht at noon? I don't think so. I've sensed that there were only 3 women on the yacht, and one of them had no magic power, and the other 2 were babies. But that man shouldn't be an ordinary person. You said you felt danger from him, right? Yes, it was a very dangerous feeling, but I don't think he could kill Dawson and his men alone. Captain, that yacht appeared behind us today. Appeared behind us? Are they ambushing us? No, they're sailing around Arma Island. They're very slow, and it looks like they're just having fun. Winku, do you think we should get in touch with him? Rode asked hesitantly. We can try, but don't let him feel malicious. Send them a message. There are many reefs in this area. They replied, thank you, and invited us to their ship, the crew said. This was the rule of the sea. If a strange ship approached rashly, it was likely to cause a misunderstanding or trouble. Usually, they would communicate first and then make a judgment. If the other party felt that there was no danger, they would send an invitation. If the other party refused, then it was best not to approach. Otherwise, the other party might do something extreme. According to the convention of the sea, too close was considered dangerous. Chapter 1503. A while later, Wink Sieg's boat approached. After receiving permission, Wenk Sieg and Captain Rode boarded the Hydra. "Hello, we meet again." Qin Zhao stood up with a smile. Wenk Sieg and Rode looked at the four people on the deck. Qin Zhao and Fei Lai both had children in their arms. They'd also prepared a lot of food. It seemed to be enough for dozens of people. "Hello, I'm Wenk Sieg. This is our captain, Rhoda Spider. I'm Qin Zhao. This is the mother of my two children, Fei Lai." After getting to know each other, Qin Zhao said, "Aren't you going to call your crew over? I have plenty of food here." "Of course, if you agree." Qin Zhao could tell that Wenk Sieg's group was not in the same group as Dolsen's group that had come in the morning. As the hostess, Fei Lai was in charge of entertaining the friends she'd made at sea. Little Jerlin, on the other hand, ran here and there. "I'm Little Jerlin. Hello, hello." The crew members were all very friendly and greeted Jerlin warmly. Qin Zhao, Wenk Sieg, and Rode leaned against the railing and chatted. "Mr. Qin, you're a spiritualist too, right?" "Obviously." Qin Zhao shrugged and did not deny it. "So if I may ask, do you know Dolsen?" "Oh, you mean the guys I fed to the sharks today?" "Dolsen's dead?" They'd thought of this possibility, but they'd thought that it wasn't likely. Now that Qin Zhao admitted it, they had no choice but to believe it. "If you're his friends, I hope you can do it after the party. If you're not, I hope we can be friends. We're enemies with Dolsen, not friends." "Then what organization are you from?" "We're hunters. Dolsen is our enemy." "Are you hunters who specialize in fighting spiritualists? Or superheroes and villains like in movies?" "Neither. We only target Dolsen and the organization behind him because we have a feud. Their crimes are secondary." "Then what's your function and theirs?" "Of course, if it's not convenient for you to answer, you don't have to say. We're not a secret organization. Our organization is still very famous. Our organization was founded in the early 18th century and has a history of 200 years. Our organization has a very famous hunter, Van Helsing. There are even movies about him. You should have heard of him, right?" "Oh, I've heard of it. The story of Van Helsing and Dracula." Qin Zhao had learned about Van Helsing's story from the movies. Qin Zhao knew about the Dracula family, but even Murphy and his mother didn't know if they really existed. To put it bluntly, the movie he had watched back then was the story of Van Helsing and Dracula's love-hate relationship. Actually, most of his stories are fabricated. Of course, it's true that he's a very powerful hunter. "Hunters are a group," Wenk Sieg said. "It's also a symbol of identity. We're like mercenaries, accepting employment and magic services." "What about Dawson's organization?" "A group of criminals, villains, lunatics, cultists, and idiots. It's similar to the supervillains in the movies, just smaller in scale." "How so?" "The biggest one they've ever planned was to control a governor. And then they succeeded in controlling the governor, and then the governor stepped down after 16 days in office. This group of idiots thought that by directly controlling the highest power in a political system, they could steal the entire political system." Qin Zhao also felt that it was quite stupid. They really thought this was like in a movie. Evil organizations could control the president and then control the entire country? Take America, for example. If the president released a few unreliable proposals, the House of Representatives and Senate would slap him in the face. His proposals wouldn't even be able to leave the White House. Unless the evil organization could control all the members of the House of Representatives and Senate, there was no use in controlling the president. Even if some evil organization could really control all the counselors, these counselors were supported by capitalists. These capitalists all had their own political demands. If these counselors were disobedient, the biggest possibility was that they would be sent home to farm or sent to political prison. Other times, they're no different from normal robbers or just a criminal organization, Wenk Sieg said. Wenk Sieg said, last time they gathered a few people and tried to earn enough money in the Las Vegas casinos. In the end, one of their legs was broken after they won $500,000. Their collective funds, including medical fees, are more than $500,000. Chen Zhao found it strange. These guys look worse than normal criminals. Why do I feel like they're really stupid? It's just from a different perspective. Normal criminals will have all sorts of plans to commit crimes because they don't have any supernatural powers. However, these people think that they can do whatever they want with magic, so most of their actions are anticlimactic. However, there are still a few small gangs. They are not idiots, they are real criminals. They will not fantasize about wild plans, nor will they daydream about ruling the world. They will only do very practical things, such as murder and arson. There is nothing they would not do. You mean Dawson and the others? Dawson is just a small leader. He's indeed difficult to deal with. I've been chasing him for 10 years, but he escapes every time. There were idiots who got carried away after obtaining power, but of course, there were also clear-headed criminals. Criminals with supernatural powers and clear-headed were the most troublesome. Of course, Chen Zhao had met them in Los Angeles. He'd met both. But in Los Angeles, Chen Zhao could deal with all troubles and enemies, so the ratio of supernatural crimes in Los Angeles was very low. Wang Xig said so much to Chen Zhao because she wanted him to join her organization or become a hunter. However, Chen Zhao wasn't interested. If someone appeared before Chen Zhao, he wouldn't need to be a hunter. He would take care of them easily. However, Chen Zhao wouldn't run around chasing crazy criminals with all sorts of magical spells all day. He wouldn't do something so strenuous and unrewarding. Please remember the original domain name of this book, 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1504. Wang Xig's mouth went dry, but Chen Zhao didn't accept it. She told him the pros and cons. She even said that it didn't matter what background Chen Zhao had. It didn't matter even if he was a Chinese spy. Hunters didn't care about background. They just needed to not do anything wrong. Chen Zhao could even get a commission if he took on a mission occasionally. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao really didn't care about the commission. The brewery earned tens of millions of dollars for him every month. Did he care about a few $100,000 last time? Moreover, for such a mission to fall into the hands of a newbie, it would definitely be a troublesome mission with no benefits. Maybe a few days, or even a few weeks to complete a mission. Chen Zhao wouldn't accept it unless he was crazy. Mr. Chen, you're here for the durian mission, right? Sort of, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'm just here to join in the fun. Mr. Chen, if you become a hunter, you can buy or sell the notes from other hunters. What notes? Chen Zhao was stunned. Wang Xig and Rode both stared at him in shock. You're here to join the operation against the Turin ghost ship, but you don't know about the notes of the heroes? Don't tell me you don't have any organization. What's the use of the notes? To record merits, of course, Wang Xig said. When Ku Xig said, for example, there were hundreds of spiritualists involved in the operation on the Turin Spectre ship. If we didn't have the notes of the heroic spirits, how would we know their achievements? As the founder, Blood Mary can't give everyone a recorder, right? Do you have the notes? Let me see. Chen Zhao really hadn't heard of it before. Before hearing Wang Xig talk about the notes, Chen Zhao had wondered how the Scarlet Church would know who contributed more and who didn't. Wang Xig didn't hide it. After all, the notes were too common. One book cost $1,000 and there was a discount in bulk. On Arma Island, everyone had one. Even if someone couldn't afford it, a few people could buy one together. Wang Xig saw that Chen Zhao was clearly rich, so she wasn't worried that he'd steal it. Chen Zhao took the notes. It looked like a normal notebook, but there was a faint magical aura on it. He flipped through it. There was nothing inside. How? Chen Zhao asked. As long as you have the heroic spirit notebook with you, it will record the process of the battle and the results of the battle. Can you demonstrate? Chen Zhao asked. Wang Xig looked at him. Mr. Chen, do we try it here? No problem. Then should I attack you now? Wang Xig reminded him. After all, if he accidentally hurt her, it could easily cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Yes, please. All right, I'll make my move. With that, Wang Xig's blonde hair suddenly shot toward Qin Zhao and wrapped around him. Although it was an active attack, the damage was basically within Wen Xig's control. She could control the growth of her hair, and if she wanted to kill an enemy, the power of her hair was even greater than that of a python and could directly strangle an ordinary person to death. However, Wang Xig let go of Qin Zhao after demonstrating. A line of words appeared on the notebook. Using magic to attack enemy. Target human. Ineffective. Battle over. No casualties. At the same time, the time and location of the battle appeared. The heroic spirit notebook's records were rather rough. There weren't any types of spells. The notebook belonged to Wang Xig, so the enemy in it was obviously Qin Zhao. However, the notebook could identify what type of enemy it was. Qin Zhao returned the notebook to Wang Xig. Can the battle records of the heroic spirit's notebook be given to others? In principle, no, Wang Xig said. Wang Xig said. However, the 23rd Blood Mary doesn't forbid a few people or a team, or even an organization from using the same notebook of heroes. Then, one of them can claim the prize. Therefore, in this operation, it's more advantageous to have an organization than to fight alone. Do you have extra heroic spirit notebooks? Chen Zhao asked. You really didn't prepare any? Wang Xig still couldn't believe it. Qin Zhao's behavior made him look like a newbie in the supernatural world. He didn't even know about the heroic spirit notebooks. Did he really have the ability to kill Dawson and his companions? If I did, I wouldn't have asked you for it, Qin Zhao said. Do you want the low-level one or the high-level one? What's the difference? Or does the 23rd Blood Mary of the Scarlet Church have any requirements? That's not true. But take my notebook, for example. It's a low-level heroic spirit notebook, and it only records the rough process of a battle. If it's a high-level notebook, it'll be connected to the user's mana, and there will be more detailed records. How much is the low-level one? How much is the high-level one? No matter the price, it shouldn't be a problem for you. I'll get someone to bring you a high-level one. A while later, Wang Xig brought over a high-level heroic spirit notebook. On the surface, it looked no different from a low-level heroic spirit notebook. What do I need to do so it can record my actions? Just send your magic in, Wang Xig said. Wang Xig said the first person to inject magic power into it will be recorded in the notebook of the hero. Qin Zhao sent his magic in. As expected, he felt a connection with the heroic spirit notebook. You can try to attack me, Wang Xig said. Qin Zhao glanced at her. Then I'll attack. Okay, come on. Pointing at Wang Xig, Qin Zhao cast the green robe's sect spell needle thread. His magic was like a needle, and he poked Wang Xig's arm lightly. Wang Xig was prepared, but she didn't expect Qin Zhao's attack to be silent. Her defenses became useless. Qin Zhao looked at a line of words on the notebook. Use needle thread to ambush the target and cause very, very low damage. Then there was the time and place. It actually recorded the spells he used in detail. But after thinking about it, he understood that it should be because this heroic spirit's notebook was connected to his mana. It's very detailed, but won't it expose my magic? It seems like it's not as good as a low-level heroic spirit notebook. Actually, high-level heroic spirit notebooks are mostly used to record one's battles. It's for reference, so that the next time I encounter a similar battle, I can improve it. Chapter 1505. To put it simply, the advanced notes were used to record battles. Low-level heroic spirit notes were used to record achievements and achievements. Soon after, Wang Xig left with her men. The underlings came out to clean up the trash left by the party. Little Jerlin ran to Chen Zhao excitedly. Dad, I met so many new friends just now. How many is a lot? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Little Jerlin moved her fingers and counted very seriously. But after counting to 5, she couldn't count anymore. Daddy, I don't have enough fingers. Lend me some. Don't you have another hand? You have to keep the other hand to count. Oh, I see. Chen Zhao handed both hands to Jerlin. Little Jerlin started counting again. 1, 2, 6, 10. Then 1 more, 2 more, 3 more, 4 more, 5 more. Daddy, it's done. 10, 5 more. Done. Yes, I don't want more, Jerlin said proudly. Just 10, 5 more. Why don't you want more? Because Jerlin can't count anymore. 10, 5 more is enough. How about you lend me Mom's fingers too? In fact, there were about 20 crew members on Wenk Sieg's ship who came to the party. Jerlin hugged the candy and asked each crew member if they wanted to be friends. If they wanted to be friends, she would give them a candy. Now that she couldn't count anymore, she didn't want any extra friends. At night, Qin Zhao's family was asleep. However, the underlings in charge of navigation were still at their posts. The yacht could sail automatically as long as the route was set. The underlings still chose to monitor the route to make sure nothing went wrong. The wind and waves were slightly stronger at night, but for the Hydra, the passengers on the yacht didn't feel anything at all. Wenk, what do you think of that man? Rich, confident, but also a bit ignorant, Wenk Sieg said. But that sense of danger never goes away. He said he killed Dolson and his gang. Is that true? He's stronger than Dolson, there's no doubt about that. At least Dolson doesn't make me feel any danger. Wenk Sieg thought for a while and said, his probing attack on me was harmless, but it still gave me a fright. There were no signs and I couldn't sense it. If he wanted to kill me just now, it should have been easy. But Dolson and his gang are all veterans. Are you sure that he can defeat so many people by himself? Maybe we have a chance to test his strength. Test him? Are you sure you want to do this? That's not a good idea. I don't want to make an enemy out of nowhere. No, didn't you suspect that there is a spy on our ship? This time Dolson and his gang disappeared. So this spy will definitely spread the news. Dolson's uncle is on Arma Island. When Quebec learns that his nephew was killed, do you think he will sit back and do nothing? Besides, Quebec's wife is here too. Rode frowned and pondered for a while, but he was still a little hesitant. Quebec's wife isn't an ordinary person. That man can't deal with Quebec's wife. Quebec was considered a senior in that gang, but he was only a senior. He wasn't much stronger than his nephew, Dolson. But Quebec was strong because he had a very strong wife. That woman was called Nicole Neptune, but she had many nicknames, such as the Moving Disaster, the Female Tyrannosaurus, and the Glutton. It was said that this woman would eat her enemies, not cut them into pieces, but directly swallow them. Wenk Sieg and Rode had been tracking Dolson and his gang since they came to Los Angeles, but they had a few chances to make a move. But because Quebec and Nicole Neptune were nearby, they didn't dare to make a move. But we can't stop this, Wenk Sieg said. Wenk Sieg said, so the only thing we can do now is to be prepared and help that man when necessary. They didn't know who the mole was, so they couldn't stop it even if they wanted to. Also, they didn't have any way to intercept information. Technically speaking, they were no different from normal gangs. Ding! Just then, Wenk Sieg received a message. Wenk Sieg's expression changed when she saw that. The person in charge of monitoring Quebec and Nicole Neptune on Arma Island said that the two of them just left Arma Island at night. Looks like they won't stay overnight, Rode said. Rode said, but even with us, I'm afraid we won't be able to deal with Nicole Nepos. Unless we don't help her, Wenk Sieg said. It's not that. Just inform that man to leave this area. If his super yacht wants to leave, no one can catch it. That's true. I'll message him now. Hello. Who is it? Qin Zhao closed his eyes. He was clearly unhappy about the call at this time. Teacher. It's me, what? Are you nearby? Yes. Qin Zhao looked at the time. It was 1 a.m. Teacher, Jalanash, Bona, Morid, and more didn't eat tonight. Lick Grove said, we don't even have a place to stay. What's wrong? We got into a conflict on the island. All our luggage is gone. I have all the equipment here. I'm circling Arma Island now. Can you come over? After all, they were all on the same side. Chen Zhao didn't want them to suffer. After all, they were still kids. Sure. We rented a speedboat on the island. That's a deserted island. How can you rent a speedboat? Teacher, the island is full of merchants now. They sell everything. Since you're selling everything, why are you looking for me? The trashiest tent costs $1,000. Teacher, do you think we can afford it? You're pretty rich, right? You spend so much money on school. My dad already reduced my weekly expenses. Lick Grove said gloomily. Fine. Come as soon as possible and spend the night on my boat. Chen Zhao stood up carefully, trying not to make a sound. These kids hadn't eaten all day. They must be tired and hungry. He had the underlings prepare some food. Just then, an underling saw Chen Zhao walk out of the bedroom. He immediately ran over. Master, what can I do for you? Prepare some drinks and food. Grove and the others are coming. Chapter 1506. Nicole Nepps was violent, ugly, crazy, jealous, and greedy. This was the impression her husband, Quebec, had of her. He was filled with fear and hatred towards Nicole Nepps. When he married Nicole Nepps, it was Nicole Nepps who forced him to marry her. Nicole Nepps had told him that if he dared to refuse, she would eat him. That's right, eat him with her mouth. Nicole Nepps had eaten many people in front of Quebec. Quebec had never seen a woman more terrifying and crazier than Nicole Neptune. Because of the special magic, Nicole Nepps had a height of 2 meters. She weighed an astonishing 400 kilograms. Just by standing there, she was like a fortress. She could easily swallow 3 or 4 people alive without breaking a sweat. At the moment, Quebec and Nicole Nepps were on the same yacht. Quebec, if you don't prepare 2 people for me for supper tonight, you're dead, Nico Neptune said unhappily. She was obviously unhappy that Quebec had woken her up in the middle of the night. Quebec's face was pale. Nicole, there will be. I promise, I promise. Plus, you've met Dawson, right? He's Nien's nephew. Now that he's been killed, we should do something. Dawson, I remember now. Nicole Nepps licked her lips. What a pity. If I knew he would die here, I would have eaten him the first time we met. Quebec couldn't help but shiver. He had always known that Nicole Nepps treated humans as food. However, he didn't expect that even his relatives would be seen as food by Nicole Nepps. Then would he be eaten one day? Quebec shuddered at the thought of this. At this moment, a speedboat rumbled past the yacht the 2 of them were on. There are a few people on it. Catch them and we'll have a feast. Nicole Nepps' eyes lit up as she looked at the speedboat. Nicole, that's a speedboat. Our yacht isn't that fast. Quebec didn't dare to say that because Nicole Nepps was too heavy. The small yacht wasn't fast to begin with. And with Nicole Nepps on board, its speed was even slower. But if he said that out loud, Nicole Neptune would eat him up. I don't care. Chase after them. I'm going to eat them. If you can't do it, I'll eat you. Quebec was even more terrified. He already regretted waking Nicole Neptune up because of what happened to Dawson. Don't worry, it's just a speedboat. Although it's fast, its endurance is very poor, Quebec said. The advantage of a speedboat was its short-range speed. But because of the problem of the fuel load, it was definitely not as much as a yacht, and the range was at most 12 nautical miles. Although their yacht wasn't big, it could still travel a few hundred nautical miles. That's great. I can have a full meal, and I can eat as much as I want at sea. Nicole Nepps shouted excitedly. Road. There's a small boat heading towards that super yacht. Is it Nicole Nepps? So fast? Rhodes' eyes flickered. Shall we go there now? Join hands with that man? Not yet. Rode shook his head. Let Nicole Nepps fight with that man for a while first. That man's strength shouldn't be weak, and he won't collapse so soon. Pian, did you see the yacht that passed by just now? King Tong said with a solemn face. Yes, I saw it. What's wrong? Do you know the people on that ship? Pian asked curiously. One of the most terrifying witches in the world. The most terrifying witch. When the others heard King Tong's words, they also came over curiously. How terrifying! Is she very powerful? She's a nightmare. King Tong said, I was her enemy more than a decade ago. What happened then? That time, she snatched an inheritance treasure from a family. That family hired over 20 spiritualists, and I was one of them. We only had one mission, and that was to snatch back that family's inheritance treasure. In the end, did you complete the task? No. King Tong shook her head. There were 27 spiritualists, but only 5, including me, are left. The others, were they all killed by that woman? It's more terrifying than death. Everyone was eaten by her. Human beings instinctively rejected the concept of cannibalism. All of them were swallowed by her. King Tong's face was extremely solemn. You can't imagine how terrifying that woman is. She seems to have an immortal body. All magic can't hurt her. Then we watched her eat her companions one by one. It's terrible. Everyone looked back, but because of the vast night at the moment, they could no longer see the yacht. By the way, this is the right direction, isn't it? This speedboat can't go too far. If we go in the wrong direction, we'll be in trouble. It can't be wrong. The teacher has sent me the location, Lit Grove said. There. Bona had already seen the outline of the huge ship in front of them. Even in the darkness of the night, it was still difficult to hide the huge scale of the Hydra. When King Tong and Pian saw the Hydra, they were a little surprised. It was that ship. They had a deep memory of that ship. The Hydra was really too big and luxurious. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Yes, that ship is my teacher's ship. When the speedboat approached the Hydra, they could already see Chen Zhao standing on the bow deck. The yacht slowed down and approached them slowly. When King Tong and Pian boarded the yacht, they were really a little nervous. They had never boarded such a luxurious yacht. Chen Zhao recognized the two of them. Hello, are you friends of Grove and the others? Hello, I'm King Tong and she's Pian. We met your students on Yuma Island today. Nice to meet you, sir. Hello, they're still children. It's their honor to meet them. I hope you can take care of them on Yuma Island. They're all very powerful and don't necessarily need our care. At this moment, the noise of an engine came from the sea again. The pupils of King Tong and Pian suddenly contracted. The huge body on the approaching yacht made them tremble all over. Hey! Another guest is coming. Chen Zhao looked at the yacht that was rushing over. Chapter 1507. Oh no, it's Nicole Neptune. Hurry up and set sail. We can't let that woman get on the boat. King Tong and Pian were both terrified. Grove, take them to eat something to fill their stomachs. I've prepared some cooked food for you, Chen Zhao said. Is there cooked food? Great, we'll have food. However, Pian and King Tong were full of eagerness, especially King Tong. He had fought with Nicole Neptune before. He knew very well how terrifying Nicole Neptune was. But Chen Zhao, Liani Grove, and the others all looked like they didn't care. They didn't panic at all because of Nicole Neptune's arrival. Obviously, they didn't understand what he had said before at all. They didn't understand how terrifying Nicole Neptune was at all. Mr. Chin, you don't understand how terrifying Nicole Neptune is. There's only a glimmer of hope if we all join forces to fight against her. If you think you can defeat Nicole Neptune one-on-one, you're completely wrong. King Tong, don't worry. My teacher is very, very powerful. Lit Grove, Bona, Jalanash, Giselle, Moore, and Mord were all full of confidence in Chen Zhao. What a joke! If Chen Zhao couldn't solve the problem, all of them would be in vain. However, King Tong clearly didn't have any confidence in Chen Zhao. Even if all of them joined forces, they didn't think they had a 30% chance of winning. Not to mention Chen Zhao's casual attitude. In his opinion, this was a sign of arrogance and ignorance. As for Pian, she didn't know Nicole Neptune, but she trusted King Tong. Since King Tong was so cautious, it meant that Nicole Neptune was really terrifying. Mr. King Tong, it's really okay. My teacher is very powerful. No one in the world is my teacher's match. King Tong couldn't take Lit Grove's words seriously at all. Lit Grove had been saying this all the time. King Tong and Pian had never refuted it. After all, everyone had their own idol. There was no need to correct them. But it was different now. They were about to face one of the most terrifying witches in the world. At this time, the yacht had already approached. On the yacht, there were two figures, one big and one small. Compared to the terrifying Nicole Neptune, Quebec looked like a bamboo pole. In fact, before marrying Nicole Neptune, Quebec had a pretty good figure. He was 185 meters tall and had beautiful muscles. But after marriage, Quebec had been squeezed dry by the ruthless Nicole Neptune. Compared to Quebec, Nicole Neptune was the opposite. He was 2 meters tall. 999% of the people in the world could not grow so tall. On top of that, he had hundreds of kilograms of fat on his body and that ridiculously big mouth. Great, this is perfect. With so many people here, I won't have to eat for more than 10 days. Nicole Neptune's face was full of joy when she saw everyone on the deck. Nicole Neptune grabbed the skinny Quebec and jumped onto the deck of the Hydra. When Chen Zhao saw the moving piece of fat jump onto the deck seemed to be slightly dented. He immediately felt that it was on fire again. Quebec was like a chicken in Nicole Neptune's hands. Such a strong man. Seeing Chen Zhao's body, Nicole Neptune's eyes suddenly lit up. Asian, be my husband. I like you. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao and shuddered uncontrollably. Chen Zhao's face darkened. If you want to fight, then fight. Why is she teasing me in public? Suddenly, Chen Zhao sensed a familiar aura from Nicole Neptune. Looking at Nicole Neptune's extremely ugly face filled with desire, Chen Zhao opened his mouth and licked his tongue. Chen Zhao frowned. Does this woman have the bloodline of a glutton? Although it was very faint, to the point of being negligible. But because of the bloodline, the woman looked a bit twisted. Although she still had the appearance of a human, her insides had probably changed due to the bloodline of gluttony. If you don't agree, I'll eat you up. Hurry up and decide if you want to accept my love or not. Usually, when gluttons met, they would either be superiors and subordinates, blood relatives, or devour and be devoured. However, Chen Zhao really had no appetite for this woman. Chen Zhao would rather devour a demon that was 100 times uglier than Nicole Neptune than let this woman enter his body. It wasn't just because she was human, but also because she disgusted him. I want you, I must have you. If you don't agree, I'll eat you up. You're mine. Nicole Neptune reached out her thick arm and grabbed at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao raised his hand and grabbed Nicole Neptune's right arm. Even though their sizes were many times different in the spiritual world, size wasn't an absolute difference in power. In Chen Zhao's eyes, Nicole Neptune was still too weak. Chen Zhao pushed his hand away. Go away, stupid pig. Hearing that, Nicole Neptune was instantly enraged. What did you say? What did you call me? You dare to call me stupid pig? You're dead, you're dead. I'm going to eat you. I'm going to pull out your flesh, swallow everything, and then defecate. Nicole Neptune's face was ferocious, and she let out a deafening roar. King Tong and Penny's expressions changed too. They felt their scalps go numb. So scary. In their eyes, this woman wasn't human anymore. She was a beast, a monster. Nicole, you're hurting me. Let go of me. Quebec yelled. His thin body felt like it was going to be crushed by Nicole Neptune. Useless trash, I'm tired of you. Now it's time for you to make your final contribution. Nicole Neptune suddenly raised Quebec before her. You, what are you doing? Nicole, I'm your husband. You can't do this to me. Quebec realized that things weren't going well, but he was firmly grasped by Nicole Neptune. He couldn't struggle. Nicole Neptune's power wasn't something a human could possess. Nicole Neptune's mouth opened wide and kept opening. After tonight, you're no longer my husband. Help, help. I don't want to die. Don't eat me, don't, crack. Quebec's cries for help stopped abruptly. His head was stuffed into Nicole Neptune's mouth. Please remember the original domain of this book. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor Mobile Version. Chapter 1508. Quebec's hands and feet were still moving, but there was no sound anymore. Suddenly, a beam of golden light shot at Nicole Neps. It was King Tong who had attacked. He had used his Eye of the God. Ever since his fight with Nicole Neps more than a decade ago, King Tong had been thinking about how to defeat Nicole Neps. Later, he realized that Nicole Neps' biggest weakness was when she was eating. But today's attempt disappointed him, even made him despair. Nicole Neps was unharmed. Even with a person in her mouth, Nicole Neps could still speak. Don't worry. It'll be your turn soon, hee. After swallowing her husband, Quebec, Nicole Neps's stomach seemed bigger. Other than that, there were no other changes to her body. However, her aura had become even more powerful and terrifying. Now it's your turn. Nicole Neps grinned at Qin Zhao. The third thing Nicole Neps hated was people disturbing her when she was eating. The second thing she hated was when someone rejected her love. What she hated the most was people calling her a pig. Unforgivable. Qin Zhao, on the other hand, looked at Nico Neps with interest. Nicole Neps's glutton bloodline was too thin, but Qin Zhao actually saw another way to use it in her. Qin Zhao's glutton bloodline could be used to absorb and talk. However, after eating someone, Nicole Neps used the person as her battery. She didn't absorb the person's magic power. Instead, she used the person as a spare tire. In other words, as long as she kept eating the enemy in battle, and as long as the enemy wasn't strong enough to kill her instantly, her magic power would almost never run out. So, under normal circumstances, she couldn't win. Perhaps he should find a chance to ask Beelzebub Zophie. With his strength, he should be able to teach him more ways to use the glutton bloodline. Just then, Nicole Neps reached out to Qin Zhao again. His blood splattered. Ritter Grove, who was standing closer, was splattered with blood. Qin Zhao lifted the flabby arm that was almost as thick as a person. Nicole Neps took 2 steps back in shock. She didn't scream, but the fat on her face was shaking. The pain of losing his arm pierced through his heart. Glutton bloodline. Unfortunately, you're still too weak. Qin Zhao looked at Nico Neps indifferently. King Tong and Payan were furious. How terrible! How did he do it? In the blink of an eye, Nicole Neptune's arm was torn off. Teacher, don't spill blood on me the next time you fight, Lit Grove complained. Ritter Grove was sure that Qin Zhao had purposely splashed the blood on him. This woman has the bloodline of the King of Gluttony, one of the 7 demon kings of hell. Although it's very faint, it's still a good thing. If you touch it, there's a small chance that it will change your bloodline. You don't understand Master's good intentions. Really? Lit Grove looked surprised. Of course it's real. In fact, other than the little handsome guy's bloodline, which would be reduced to ashes with just a touch, there was no other bloodline. If someone accidentally touched the 7 deadly sins Demon King's bloodline, there was a small chance that it would change their bloodline. Of course, Nicole Neptune's glutton bloodline was extremely thin. Changing her bloodline in this way was no different from winning the lottery. From a biological perspective, it was similar to changing genes through chemical reactions. Of course, the purer the demon's bloodline, the more intense the chemical reaction. At the same time, the stability of the modified party's genes had to be considered. If a normal person received the blood of a demon king, they would probably have a hemorrhage. If one's genes were stronger, there wouldn't be many changed genes. Jalinash secretly wiped the blood on the ground with her finger and then smeared it on her face. Do you think you'll definitely win? Nicole Neptune stared at Qin Zhao fiercely. Of course. Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. You still have a trump card, right? Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Nicole Neptune looked at the position of her broken arm. Suddenly, her body started shrinking. It was very obvious. Then, a new arm grew out from her broken arm. Pei En and King Tong were both shocked. What kind of spell was this? It could make someone grow a broken arm? But to Chen Zhao, it wasn't strange. Slightly stronger demons could regrow their broken arms. Nicole Neptune, on the other hand, had already started demonizing again because of her glutton bloodline. After her arm grew out, her body was still shrinking. Chen Zhao saw that Nicole Neptune's fat was rapidly decreasing. In a few minutes, Nicole Neptune's body had shrunk by half. A pair of metal blade-like structures grew out of her arms. Nicole Neptune's aura became stronger. Her body became more solid and less bloated. You're the second person who forced me to do this, Nicole Neptune said. Nicole Neptune had purposely kept her fat. To her, the more fat she had, the more powerful she was. Because of the special nature of magic, she could only increase her fat beyond biological limits by eating humans or creatures with magic power. If he was a normal person, how could he grow to a weight of 400 kilograms? Facing Chen Zhao now, she had to use her trump card. Other people burned their life force to fight. She didn't need to work so hard. She only needed to burn her fat. Then I'll try to be the first person to kill you. Nicole Neptune moved. King Tong and Pei both felt a terrifying aura coming at them. Even though Nicole Neptune wasn't targeting them, they still felt a suffocating pressure. Nicole Neptune raised her right arm and stabbed at Chen Zhao along with the blade-like structure. Clang! The next moment, Nicole Neptune's right blade was broken by Chen Zhao. At the same time, Chen Zhao punched her. Nicole Neptune was sent flying. Her face was almost deformed. King Tong and Pei were in disbelief. How terrifying was this Asian? Facing the terrifying Nico Neps, he didn't move a single step from start to finish. Nicole Neptune was both angry and shocked. The pain from the injury on her face stimulated her nerves. You like to eat people, but do you like to be eaten? Chapter 1509. Nicole Neptune's expression changed drastically. You eat people too? Nicole Neptune felt that only someone with the same magic as her could have such terrifying combat power. However, she didn't understand why Chen Zhao wasn't fat at all and still had a perfect figure. But she didn't have the courage to continue fighting. She turned around and dove into the water. Go after her. Don't let her get away. King Tong yelled anxiously, but no one, including Chen Zhao, was in a hurry. They all leaned against the railing and watched Nicole Neptune, who was flopping in the water. Wow, this fat pig. He's so big, but he can still swim so fast, Bona exclaimed. Nicole Neptune had already burned half of her fat, but she was still 2 or 3 times the size of a normal person. At 200 kilograms, she was still a giant. But Nicole Neptune wasn't slow at all in the water. Aren't you going after her? King Tong said excitedly. If she gets away, there'll be endless trouble. In his opinion, Chen Zhao and the others were unmoved by Nicole Neptune's escape. They were letting the tiger return to the mountain. Lit Grove and the others didn't think much of it. Could that fat pig run away from Chen Zhao? Should we make a bet on how long this pig can swim? Chen Zhao asked. Teacher, what's the bet? If anyone guesses correctly, then our association's group trip this year will go to the place where the Scarlet Church gives out missions. I'll help you get a mission. Everyone's eyes lit up. King Tong and Pian felt that Chen Zhao was too arrogant. None of the 98 places where the Scarlet Church gave out missions were simple. The difficulty of each one was about the same as besieging the ghost ship. Ever since the missions were given out, they hadn't heard of any place's mission being completed. Even in the spiritual world of Huaxia, 8 missions were still there. There were many participants, but none of them had the ability to complete the mission. Now, Chen Zhao was boasting that he could do it himself? King Tong and Penny were both surprised that Qin Zhao had defeated Nicole Neptune. But Nicole Neptune didn't expect that Qin Zhao would defeat Nicole Neptune. But to say that Qin Zhao could complete the mission given by the Scarlet Church alone was wishful thinking. I bet she can swim for 20 minutes. I bet 30 minutes. I bet she can swim for an hour. Except for King Tong and Pian, everyone else made a bet. Two of you, Qin Zhao said. Bring out the food. We'll eat while waiting for the results. King Tong and Pian found that no matter how hard Nico Nep swam, she could not swim more than 100 meters away. She was always swimming within 100 meters. Everyone sat on the deck and watched Nicole Neptune as they ate and drank. What's going on? Is it water magic? King Tong asked in confusion. Nicole Neptune had swum for so long, but she hadn't even swum 100 meters. It was definitely abnormal. So it was only natural that he thought it was magic. But wasn't this man an enhancer? How could he also know water magic? To be able to affect a distance of 100 meters. This magic ability should not be weak. The most important thing was that this spell had to be maintained, and it would consume a lot of magic power. No wonder they all looked like they knew this would happen. It turned out that he was certain that Nicole Neptune would not be able to escape. Finally, Nicole Neptune's thoughts stopped. Teacher, look. She's not moving anymore. Let's see how long it takes. 28 minutes. Who's closest? Qin Zhao asked. Jalanash. Jalanash, when we go back, pick a place for our trip this year. President, I don't have to participate this time, right? Why not? If you win this time, you can get 2 rewards. Why not? King Tong felt that Qin Zhao was strong, but he was a bit arrogant and ignorant. Even the 24th and 25th generations of the Scarlet Church only received 1% of the magic power of the 23rd generation of Blood Mary. Among them, the 24th generation of Blood Mary was a rather famous witch. Even she could only take 1% of the magic power. How could others take 2? Ah! Suddenly, Nicole Neptune's scream came from the sea. Everyone saw Nicole Neptune swim back, but the water she swam through was dyed red. President, if I fought her, would I be able to win? Jalanash asked curiously as she looked at Nicole Nep's figure. Your single-target magic attack isn't strong, and your group magic attack is too scattered, so you can't beat her, Qin Zhao said. But it doesn't mean that you're not as strong as her. It's just that you're taking a different path. Help. Help me. I don't want to die. Nicole Neptune swam closer and began to ask for help. Ha! Everyone laughed, as if they were laughing at Nicole Neptune. Just then, a black shadow flashed below Nicole Neptune. What's that? King Tong vaguely saw the huge shadow. Ah! The next moment, Nicole Neptune was dragged into the sea. This time, Nicole Neptune did not float up again. Everything returned to silence. Only King Tong could vaguely see something in the darkness because of her divine eyes. Just then, another yacht approached. What's going on? Why don't I see Nicole Neptune? Is she not here? Rode was confused. The yacht approached the Hydra. Wenk Sieg and Rode saw Qin Zhao and a group of people eating and drinking on the deck, but they did not see Nicole Neptune. But next to the Hydra, there is a speedboat and a yacht. Mr. Qin, what a coincidence. We meet again, Wenk Sieg said to Qin Zhao at the bow of the boat. Yeah, what a coincidence. Do you want to come over for supper? No, thanks. Wenk Sieg shook her head with a smile. By the way, Mr. Qin, did you see anyone suspicious? Suspicious? No. Okay. If you encounter anyone dangerous, remember to let us know. We'll come as soon as possible. Okay. Qin Zhao nodded. Qin Zhao had a good impression of Wenk Sieg. But now, he did not have such a good impression of her. She was the only one he had told about Dawson's death. But now that the news had spread, whether intentionally or not, it was definitely related to her. Moreover, the radar on the Hydra had already detected that Wenk Sieg's boat was nearby. They were clearly watching the fire from the other side. Chen Zhao did not know what their intentions were, whether or not they had ill intentions. Chen Zhao didn't want to deal with them anymore. Chapter 1510. Chen Zhao wouldn't turn hostile immediately. After all, he didn't have any evidence. But this didn't mean he would pretend to be courteous with them. Chen Zhao preferred to deal with people directly instead of deceiving each other. After they were full, Chen Zhao arranged a room for them to rest. There were many empty rooms on the Hydra. Apart from the biggest room, there were also many luxuriously decorated suites. Everyone could finally enjoy the night. Wenku, what do you think? Nicole Neptune's dead. Dead. Impossible. Rode exclaimed in shock. According to the people I arranged on Roma Island, Nicole Neptune's yacht is the one docked next to the super yacht. The yacht was there, but Nicole Neptune was nowhere to be seen. Could it be that this is all a scam? Maybe Dawson isn't dead. Nicole Nelson and Quebec aren't dead either. Wenku shook her head. They're all dead. How can you be sure? The area around the super yacht just now was filled with a rather dense magic aura. Someone was releasing high-intensity magic or fighting there. Because Chen Zhao and the others were in the sea, they didn't feel the magical aura. But for someone like Wenku Sieg, who was very sensitive to magic power, it was very obvious that she had entered that sea region. Moreover, both Wenku Sieg and Rode could feel his hostility. The next time they met, they probably wouldn't be friends anymore. The two couldn't help but sigh and regret. They'd thought that the plan was good. Not only could they test Chen Zhao's strength, but they could also intervene when Chen Zhao and Nicole Neptune were both injured. They could kill Nicole Neptune and save Chen Zhao, making him owe them a favor. It was a perfect plan that killed many birds with one stone. In the end, before they could arrive, Chen Zhao had already killed Nicole Neptune. Chen Zhao's strength was revealed. He was stronger than Nicole Neptune. But in the end, they lost a powerful ally. The next day everyone woke up one after another. Sleeping in a luxurious suite was much better than sleeping in the wilderness and feeding mosquitoes. One by one, they got up energetically. Brother Grove, Sister Jolinash, Sister Bona, when did you come? Jerlin propped her head on the table and looked at everyone curiously. Last night. Little Jerlin fell asleep last night. That's why I came. He reached out and wanted to pinch Jerlin's face too, but then he remembered Chen Zhao's warning and touched Jerlin's head instead. You're right, Jerlin said with a smile. Other than Chen Zhao, no one could pinch Jerlin's face. Whoever dared to pinch little Jerlin's face would be beaten to death. Okay, Chen Zhao was definitely joking. However, if they dared to break the rules, Chen Zhao would definitely punish them. Apart from King Tong and Pian, little Jerlin was already very familiar with Lit Grove and the others. Brother Grove, little Jerlin caught such a big fish yesterday, little Jerlin said as she spread her arms and gestured. Little Jerlin is the best. The crowd was not stingy with their praise for little Jerlin, but it was obvious that Chen Zhao or Fei Lai had helped pull him up. Lit Grove stood up and went to get another bowl of porridge. Grove, you've already eaten 3 bowls. Do you still want more? I slept too well last night. My appetite is super good today. Don't eat too much, Fei Lai said. Your teacher said that there's going to be another big meal at noon. Since the Turin ghost ship was expected to arrive tonight, they didn't plan to go to Noma Island so soon. Chen Zhao also planned to take this opportunity to entertain them well. I'm not hungry, but I just want to eat. Forget it. You can eat if you want. Chin has a big appetite too. Grove, are you an enhancer like Chin? Fei Lai wasn't a witch, but she more or less knew some branches of magic. No, I'm a semi-support type. Just then, Chen Zhao also entered the dining room. He took a breakfast and sat down. King Tong and Pian had no idea about Fei Lai's so-called big appetite, but when they saw Chen Zhao put a pot in front of them, they were instantly speechless. Was this guy a glutton? Of course. Chen Zhao's family prepared plenty of food every day. Anyway, they wouldn't let their guests go hungry. Halfway through eating, Qin Zhao suddenly looked up at Lit Grove. Huh, what's wrong? Grove, you seem to have changed. What, teacher? What changed? You seem to be stained with that woman's blood last night. You really won the lottery. Huh. You have the bloodline of the king of gluttony. Everyone exclaimed and looked at Lit Grove. Teacher, what did you say? I feel the bloodline of gluttony in your body, Qin Zhao said. It's very faint, but it did appear. Teacher, you mean I have the bloodline of gluttony? Lit Grove didn't know how to face it. As one of the demon kings of hell, the king of gluttony is the representative of evil, King Tong said cautiously. His bloodline may affect your mind. You better be careful. Don't listen to his nonsense. There's no such thing. Chen Zhao waved his hand. King Tong's face was instantly filled with embarrassment, but Chen Zhao didn't think so. Whether it's bloodline or power, there's no good or bad. Unless you become an irrational beast, you're still you. Take our associations, Helios, for example. She's the inheritor of necromancy. Is necromancy evil? Is Helios evil? You just have to control your mentality and don't lose your sense of propriety because you suddenly gained power. The so-called power will change your mind. That's just a lie to kids. Compared with King Tong, Lit Grove certainly trusted Qin Zhao more. However, King Tong was very dissatisfied with Chen Zhao's words. Mr. Qin, I don't agree with you. Just like Nicole Neptune, can you say that she's not evil? Whether or not she's evil has nothing to do with her power. I've seen monsters that can bewitch people's hearts. Those monsters don't rely on power, but magic imprints. They use magic to harass and torture people, not pollution. It's like sunlight. For the entire earth, sunlight brings warmth and life, but it also brings death. The nature of power is the same. What determines power isn't where it comes from, but how it's used. Qin Zhao firmly believed that one's environment determined one's nature, not power. Chapter 1511. Qin Zhao couldn't explain King Tong's stubbornness in a few words, and Qin Zhao wasn't interested in arguing with King Tong. For example, Beelzebub, who followed Qin Zhao, was a subordinate of the king of gluttony and great lord Beelzebub Zophi. Were they evil? According to human rules, they were indeed evil. But was it caused by their bloodline? No, it was caused by the environment of hell. They had to survive in hell in one way or another. In Chen Zhao's opinion, hell was also the law of the jungle. The strong were respected and the fittest survived. In fact, the seniors in the spiritual world, and even those who had lived longer, should understand that there was no such thing as evil power in this world. After noon, they were going to Arma Island again. Chen Zhao provided a lot of things, including tents, food, water, and all kinds of tools. There were more people on Arma Island today. There were only 100 people yesterday, but there were 3 or 4 times more people today. There were probably 400 or 500 people. There are so many people. Even if we work together, I'm afraid we won't be able to get many achievements. Jal Ash wasn't confident. If it was a one-on-one battle, she might be confident. But there were too many people on Arma Island today. The others are about the same, King Tong said. To be honest, if your teacher is willing to take action, we'll have a higher chance, Pian said. She had the same thought as King Tong. She felt that Qin Zhao and his disciples were a bit ignorant and fearless, but she had to admit that Chen Zhao was indeed very powerful. Even on this island, he could be a top-notch existence. However, no one thought so. If Chen Zhao took action, they wouldn't have a chance to do anything. They had seen how terrifying Chen Zhao's strength was. The only time Chen Zhao was serious, and the only time he was injured, was when he fought with the 3-headed dragon. Unfortunately, only Moraz was lucky enough to see that battle. However, compared to the 3-headed dragon, all spirits weren't that scary. Moreover, their main purpose this time wasn't the reward of the Scarlet Church, but the trial. That was what they really needed. If it was just a reward, they only needed Chen Zhao to take action. In the association, the most important thing was actual combat ability. Even Aduz dared to enter the Tower of Trials. Therefore, to Lick Grove and the others, the most important part of this operation was the actual combat experience, not the rewards. King Tong and Pian began to draw the magic circle again, while Jalanash and the others stayed to help them. Of course, when the Turin arrived, they would fight on their own. King Tong and Pian also trusted Jalanash and the others. The people on Dharma Island were basically preparing for the battle, because no one knew if the Turin would come tonight. They could only rely on some supernatural spy satellites to investigate the Turin. After all, it was impossible to send planes or ships to investigate. Once planes or ships were used, they would most likely be attacked by the Turin. The durian could not be detected during the day and would only appear at night. The factor that decided whether the Turin would come tonight was the airflow in the Pacific Ocean. If he didn't appear tonight, then he would definitely appear tomorrow night. However, in the afternoon, the wind around Mama Island became stronger. This was a sign of the arrival of the durian. Every time the durian appeared, it would be accompanied by a storm. Dark clouds began to cover the sun. The entire Dharma Island was shrouded in dark clouds. On the Hydra, Qin Zhao looked up at the sky. Will it come tonight? The waves were also a little bigger, and the Hydra was shaking a little. It wasn't strong, but it still had some effect. Qin Zhao controlled the seawater to reduce the impact on the Hydra. Recently, Qin Zhao had been thinking about how to fill his body with magic and at the same time control his body so that it wouldn't fly. This problem had been bothering Qin Zhao for a few days. Although flying has always been a pursuit of mankind since ancient times. However, when he really had the ability to fly but couldn't control it, it would feel very bad. If every cell in Qin Zhao's body was filled with magic, he would fly directly to the stratosphere. However, after a few days, Qin Zhao still had no clue. Qin Zhao thought about carrying weights. It was fine. Wearing something that weighed a few hundred kilograms wouldn't be a burden to him. However, life would be very inconvenient. For example, sitting on the sofa, lying on the bed, or driving. Take the Porsche 918 at home, for example. If he wore a few hundred kilograms of weight, the wheels would probably crush him. What Qin Zhao needed was a way that wouldn't affect his life and could be controlled. Basically, Qin Zhao's current state was that his mass density was lower than air. In theory, it was similar to a hot air balloon. So it wasn't really flying. If he was in an environment without air, he wouldn't be able to fly. From a scientific perspective, what was real flying like? Breaking free from gravity through propulsion was one. Another was anti-gravity, but it couldn't be achieved with current technology. It was still a concept. However, Qin Zhao suddenly thought of an idea, or rather a possibility. That was to change the quality of magic. The most fundamental reason he could break free from gravity was that magic changed the quality of every cell, allowing him to break free from the restraints of gravity. The quality of magic was lower than the quality of air. This was the fundamental reason. So, what if the mass of magic was greater than air? Changing the quality of magic was equivalent to compressing the magic to a higher density. In other words, it would increase his own magic power. From a scientific point of view, it was possible. But it wasn't science. It was magic, a supernatural power. Could he really do it? Qin Zhao wasn't very confident. Every cell was like an oxygen bottle or gas tank. The tank was filled with gas. Oxygen bottles and gas tanks had the same technical principle. Through air compression, oxygen and gas could be compressed into a liquid, increasing the density of oxygen and gas. Qin Zhao's heart jumped. If it was a liquid, he could control it. Maybe this method would work. But there was still the most important step. How could he compress magic? Qin Zhao reached out and gathered a ball of magic in his palm. Then his palm started shrinking. The magic started shrinking and the density started increasing. A ball of liquid appeared. Chapter 1512. He could use his own power to compress mana. but cells couldn't possibly compress so much. Now, Chen Zhao was at a bottleneck again. The mana compressed by Chen Zhao's brute force was already in a liquid state. But once it left his palm, it would immediately return to its original gaseous state. It's like a gas can, but it's liquid when it's in the can. But once there was a vent, it would be released in gaseous form. No, Chen Zhao had another idea. It wasn't impossible. He could use other cells to compress mana. One cell didn't have that much power, but what if he had more cells? He could first use other cells to compress the mana in a small area and then cover his entire body. Chen Zhao first tried with his palm. He opened his palm and started controlling his muscles, sending mana into his palm. Soon, the mana in the cells in his palm started to liquefy. It was more active and powerful. The cells were excited as if they'd been injected with stimulants. Chen Zhao started compressing other parts. This wasn't difficult for Chen Zhao, as long as he could control the muscles in each part. The small world started absorbing spiritual qi like crazy. This was Chen Zhao's first time growing mana at such a crazy rate. Gradually, his entire left palm had completed the liquefying process. Chen Zhao tried to clench his fist. It was twice as heavy as before. However, the cells in his left palm contained 10 times more mana than before. However, this transformation process was very slow and complicated. Chen Zhao used a few hours to completely compress the mana in his palm. If he wanted to compress all the cells in his body, he would need at least a month. At the moment, the power in his left arm had even surpassed that of his right arm. After all, Chen Zhao was right-handed and his right arm had the bloodline of gluttony. So, his right arm had always been many times stronger than his left arm. But now, for the first time, his left arm surpassed his right arm. But it was already getting late. The weather, which was already overcast, now felt even more gloomy and gloomy. But for the people on the Hydra, they are not affected. Chen, the ghost ship Turin will appear tonight, right? Phalai wanted to see it. I think so. Which direction will the durian come from? The port is in the direction of Arma Island, Chen Zhao said. So, Turin should be approaching Arma Island from that direction. From here, we can wait for Turin to pass by us. Chen Zhao wouldn't let the Hydra get too close to the ghost ship. At least, he couldn't let the Hydra be in the ghost ship's attack range. Of course, it wouldn't be too far. After all, they were here to watch the show. If it was too far away, there would be nothing to see. When the sky turned completely dark, the waves on the sea became even stronger. In the distance, the island of Lima was pitch black. The sea breeze, blowing from the west, was filled with a trace of restlessness. Just then, Chen Zhao saw a glimmer of light in the darkness in the distance. Here it comes. Chen Zhao had an idea. Phalai was an ordinary person, so she couldn't see it. What Chen Zhao didn't expect was that Jerlin was the second to see it. Dad, Mom, over there. There's a ship coming. The Spectre ship is coming. Little Jerlin shouted excitedly. Where? Phalai stood on her tiptoes, but she still couldn't see anything. Only when the ship was a few kilometers away did Phalai see it clearly. Ordinary people couldn't see spirits. But the Spectre ship wasn't a spirit. It had a physical body. However, because the ship carried countless evil spirits, it actually covered the ship's physical body. The wind and waves were getting bigger and bigger. Phalai finally got a clear view of the Turin ghost ship. It was a huge ship that was around 150 meters long. For that era, this ship was already very large. Even now, it could be considered a big ship. However, no matter how big it was, it couldn't escape the corrosion of time. Right now, Turin was like a decaying old man, or rather, a corpse that had long rotted away. Large amounts of seaweed hung on the ship's body, as well as many marine objects. Chen, why is there seaweed all over Turin? Turin can't be detected during the day, Chen Zhao said. Probably because it sinks into the sea during the day. Chen Zhao felt that Turin was a bit too close to the Hydra, so he secretly controlled the seawater to push the Hydra away from Turin. Phalai could see the full appearance of Turin, but she couldn't see the countless evil spirits around it. Those evil spirits were like fireflies, constantly wandering around the surroundings. Chen Zhao didn't even know how many evil spirits there were on the ship. "Chen, do you hear something?" Sound. Chen Zhao shook his head. "Do you hear something?" "Like someone's whispering in my ear," Phalai said. "Chin, will I be cursed?" Chen Zhao looked at Phalai. She wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she was eager to try. To be honest, Phalai was really looking forward to it. After all, she'd seen the world and knew that Qin Zhao was very powerful. He would protect her. "You're not cursed." Qin Zhao rolled his eyes. "But what you heard should be the howls of evil spirits. It's just that you can't see or hear evil spirits, so it sounds like someone is whispering in your ear. If you don't know what's going on, you'll be easily driven crazy by this sound. I'll get someone to give you a cleansing potion later so you won't have nightmares." Being able to see the evil spirits on the ship and not being able to see them were two different concepts. The evil spirits killed, tortured, devoured, and attacked each other every day. They'd long been twisted beyond recognition. They were stronger and scarier than normal evil spirits. Their rationality had long been destroyed. All that was left was madness. The ghost ship didn't come toward the Hydra. Instead, it flew parallel to it and brushed past it, although it was around 2 kilometers away. Chen Zhao was still on guard to ensure that no small fries would come. Turin didn't change its course. Instead, it went straight toward Arma Island. But Chen Zhao could feel that there was a very powerful evil spirit on Turin. Even that evil spirit had noticed the Hydra. The aura reminded Qin Zhao of the powerful evil spirit he'd encountered in New York, the grandfather. "Okay, the ghost ship has passed. Go into the cabin." "Qin, how long will the ghost ship stay on Arma Island?" "I heard that it'll stay for 6 hours, Qin Zhao said. "I heard that Turin used to stop at Arma Island for 6 hours to unload." Chapter 1513. It's coming. All the psychics on Roma Island shuddered. They were excited. Afraid? Yes. Facing a ghost ship. No one dared to say that they could escape unscathed. What's more, it was the Turin. Before the Turin reached the shore, everyone's hearts were shrouded in a layer of haze. Terrifying. The oppressive aura made people sink to the bottom of the valley. "I don't want to be here. Why am I so stupid? Why did I come here to take risks? This is suicide. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here." Suddenly, a psychic shouted. Before the Turin approached, he had already lost control. He was devoured by fear. The surrounding psychics had different expressions. Some sighed while others sighed. Of course, there were also strong-willed people who were unmoved. Jalanash, Bona, Lick Grove, Giselle, Moore, and Morid had all gathered on the beach. At this time, the strong wind blowing toward the island was already difficult to resist. Even if some people were not shocked by the oppressive aura, they could not stand up straight because of the strong wind. With the howling wind, the evil spirits moved with the wind and rushed onto the island. The Turin was already close to the former dock. In an instant, the scene became even more chaotic. "Then we'll fight on our own now." "Be careful, don't let the president down," Jalanash said. The first batch of evil spirits that rushed to the island with the strong wind were called unclean sailors. They were stronger than ordinary evil spirits, but they didn't even have the right to board the ship. They could only linger around the Turin and wander with it. They were stronger than ordinary evil spirits in that they could use physical attacks. They held rotten swords in their hands, and with the help of the strong wind, they were faster. They were a standard to measure psychics. If they couldn't even resist their attacks, there was no need to stay on this island. They would either be killed by the unclean sailors or consider how to escape from this battlefield. The first wave of unclean sailors had already landed, and there were already casualties. King Tong and Pian were now in the forest, which was not affected by the strong wind. They could also deal with those unclean sailors calmly. Their strength belonged to the advanced standard on this island. They were not the top, but they were stronger than most psychics. Even Pian could easily deal with the unclean sailors. King Tong, look over there. Is that Jalanash? King Tong turned her head and saw Jalanash. Well, it's indeed her. Why is she standing there? Where are the others? Pian was worried. After all, in her eyes, Jalanash and the others were just kids. Could it be that she ran out of magic power? When they fought yesterday, she used spells that cost a lot of energy. Mr. Chin also said that Jalanash's spells are all large-scale spells. I'll stay here. Go over and have a look. Ask her if she needs help, King Tong said. Because he had already activated the 4 symbols demon subduing formation, it was not convenient for him to leave the formation, so he could only let Pian go. Oh no! There are a few unclean sailors rushing towards her. Pian immediately exclaimed and hastened his pace. However, they were more than 20 meters away, and they were in the forest, so it was not easy to walk. And those unclean sailors came with the wind. Those unclean sailors rushed towards Jalanash, but Jalanash did not react at all. The unclean sailors were about to hurt Jalanash. Suddenly, a burst of red light burst out of Jalanash's body. She didn't seem to do anything, but those unclean sailors were instantly turned into ashes. Hiss! What kind of magic is that? It's not magic. She's wearing some magic prop. King Tong said, it's full of blazing power. It's not an ordinary magic prop. At this time, Jalanash had come over. Miss Pian, Mr. King Tong. Jalanash, what can I do for you? Where are your other companions? They are all fighting on their own, Jalanash said. I forgot about it during the day. These are the 2 pendants I got from the president today. They are for you. Pendants? King Tong and Pian saw Jalanash take out 2 pendant chains. There were 2 bone pendants hanging on the pendant chains, which looked like they were polished from the bones of some animal. They were polished from a dragon tooth. Because there were too many of them in the association, a dragon tooth could be polished into hundreds of dragon tooth pendants. As long as they were slightly enchanted, they would have a pretty good effect. Even the dragon tooth could be used to make bullets for Klaus and the lightning squad, because there were too many of them. So these 2 dragon tooth pendants were really not worth much. Of course, they were worthless to the members of the association. They were priceless to the outside world. King Tong and Pian took the dragon tooth pendants and immediately felt a scorching aura from them. But it was not scorching. It just made the 2 of them feel hot. It took away all the coldness in their bodies, and they felt that the recovery of their magic power seemed to be smoother. It increased the recovery speed of their magic power by at least 10%. This pendant should be a magic prop, right? And it didn't feel like the kind of inferior goods that cost hundreds of dollars. Jalanash, is this good? Don't worry. We have a lot of them. They are of no value to us. To the 2 of them, Jalanash's words sounded like she was comforting them. In fact, Jalanash was telling the truth. Not only did everyone in the association have one, but even their family members had one. It had a good effect on exorcising evil spirits and avoiding disasters. Of course, the pendants given to the relatives of the members of the association were all disguised so that they would not be killed because of the exposure of the dragon tooth pendants. Well, I won't stand in the way here and steal your monsters. I'll go somewhere else, Jalanash said with a smile. Both Pian and King Tong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Jalanash came with good intentions. How could they not know what was good for them? Moreover, the pendants she gave to the 2 of them were probably worth a lot of money. Be careful, too, King Tong reminded them. In the eyes of King Tong and Pian, Jalanash, and the other children were very good in all aspects, except that they had a low vision and were a little arrogant. They were not weak, had a strong mind, and were also kind. Well, let's not make a fool of ourselves. There are so many unclean sailors. The Turin should be docked, and the second wave is coming, King Tong said. Unlike the first wave of unclean sailors, the second wave was a real storm. The lost souls at sea were the backbone of the ghost ship, and they were also the largest in number. They were constantly looking for a way to get rid of themselves. Since they could not be purified, they only hoped to be killed. Chapter 15:14. The lost souls of the sea were the original passengers or sailors of the ghost ship. Dream follower. They were bound by death, but they couldn't rest in peace. They sought eternal disappearance, but they couldn't escape the fate of being dominated. Compared to the unclean sailors, the lost souls of the sea were more violent. They were also intelligent and wouldn't charge irrationally like the unclean sailors. The casualties of the psychics on Roma Island began to increase. The unclean sailors at the beginning were just appetizers. After eliminating the unqualified psychics, they attacked in groups. On the other hand, the lost souls of the sea were like an army. They attacked in an organized manner. Instead of attacking one after another, they attacked in groups. Behind the lost souls of the sea, there was a particularly tall evil spirit, the ghost captain. He could command his army and turn the lost souls of the sea into a real army. Moreover, after they killed the enemy, they would attach themselves to the enemy and control the enemy's body to attack. This made them even more of a threat. The psychics on the beach began to retreat. A large number of psychics were injured or even killed. This was the difference between organized and unorganized. The ghost captain had experienced countless battles. From his life to his death, he couldn't rest in peace. He didn't need to shout on the battlefield. His intentions could be conveyed to the entire battlefield with a thought. "That's impressive," Moore said with emotion. After saying that, Moore created a doppelganger and directly rushed to a team of 6 lost souls of the sea. He actually preferred this kind of team of enemies. The efficiency of those unclean sailors from before was too low. The 6 lost souls of the sea immediately waved their swords and slashed at Moore's clone. The clone pounced on one of the lost souls of the sea. The magic dragon scale armor on the clone immediately came into play. The scorching heat burned the souls of the dead at sea who had lost their way. The other souls of the sea slashed at the clone crazily, as if they wanted to chop it into pieces. However, they didn't need to do that. The clone suddenly exploded, blowing all 6 souls of the sea into pieces. Currently, Moore was still using suicidal attacks. The difference was that the bombs used were no longer the ordinary magic bombs of the past. Now they were bombs mixed with dragon scale powder, and these bombs were made by Ruan Fashabin. Ruan Faxi had originally planned to use it as a dragon's breath, although it would not be as powerful as a real dragon's breath. Compared to the association, it was cheaper to build, more powerful, and more convenient to carry. Unlike in the past, they didn't need to bring hundreds of kilograms of explosives in a single battle. Each portion of the dragon's breath was only the size of a finger. However, it was still very terrifying. The 6 dead souls of the sea did not even leave a trace behind. Moore shuddered. Although the self-destruction of his avatar did not cause any substantial harm to himself, the moment the avatar died would still bring about a very uncomfortable feeling. Moore looked at where the Turin was docked and mumbled, "If I can get to the Turin, I'll definitely earn a lot of merit points." This kind of suicidal attack was, of course, more effective when there were more enemies, although killing 6 souls of the sea at once was already a very good result. However, Moore was not satisfied. After all, he had to pay with his life every time. However, Moore did not have any close combat abilities. His avatar would not be able to get to the Turin before it was killed and self-destructed. Moreover, the ghost captain was not stupid. He would not let Moore's avatar get close. Moore was very cunning. His original body had been hiding in the forest. He would not give the souls of the sea a chance to surround him. Just like when he was in the trial tower, he had to keep running and constantly release his doppelgangers to self-destruct in order to pass the first level of the trial tower. He claimed to be the 3rd fastest man in the supernatural organization. Apart from an elite and Chen Zhao, he was the best at running. In fact, Klaus and the lightning team were better at running than him. For example, Gaia was faster than him. Just then, a ball of fire fell from the sky. The fire did not explode. Instead, it splashed in all directions. The splashing flames surrounded a dozen souls of the sea. Hiding in the forest, Emoer saw Jalanash and immediately shouted, "Jalanash, I saw this place first." Only then did Jalanash see Emoer. "Fine, I'll go somewhere else." Jalanash pouted. Emoer really knew how to pick a place. Of course, this place would fall soon. Many spiritualists had retreated. Emoer could not stay here forever. Jalanash threw another spell and turned to leave. Just then, a few ships suddenly appeared on the sea. Jalanash and Emoer's attention was attracted by the ships' movements. What are they doing? They want to destroy the Turin with the self-destructing ships? Not just Jalanash and Emoer, but many spiritualists also saw this. Some were envious, while others were jealous. It was indeed a strange move. But at this moment, a loud and orderly voice came from the Turin. It was like a choir singing in unison. But many people's expressions changed. It was not a choir singing. It was the dark spirit witches releasing spells together. It was the sound of magic incantations. The incantations were loud and eerie. Those who heard it could not help but shudder. Immediately afterward, tentacles extended from the front, back, left, and right of the self-destructing ships, entangling them. Boom, boom, boom. The ships all self-destructed before they could get close to the Turin. Emoer, get out of here quickly. Those are dark spirit witches, and there seems to be a lot of them, Jalanash reminded him. Dark spirit witches were not ordinary evil spirits or witches. They were a combination of witches and evil spirits. They used to be spiritualists who attacked the Turin when they were alive. But after their deaths, their souls were captured by the Turin and enslaved and dominated. At the same time, they gained more power than when they were alive. A terrible magic power came from the Turin. The Turin's most terrifying dark spirit witches had finally moved out. Hundreds of dark spirit witches chanted the same incantation, then left the Turin and rushed to Ma Island in all directions. The dark spirit witches were the most powerful and also the most difficult to deal with on the Turin, and there were also a lot of them. What a pity! I knew this would happen. Wenk, Sieg, and Rode both looked disappointed. Chapter 1515. When Ku Sieg's idea was to attack Turin from the sea. It was a good idea, but she clearly underestimated how terrifying Turin was. The individual strength of these dark spirit witches were already stronger than most spiritualists. This was also why Turin was so terrifying. A large number of dark spirit witches flew out of Turin. These dark spirit witches had all sorts of strange spells. Giselle controlled a few flying balls, which were all covered in dragon scales. Against normal evil spirits, there was no need to use the machinery of the flying balls. They only needed to charge forward and tear those evil spirits to pieces. What a beautiful little girl! Suddenly a voice was heard. Giselle turned around and saw that it was an old witch. Her face was full of wrinkles. She wore a witch hat on her head, had a hooked nose, long pointed ears, and a mouth full of rotten teeth. She held a walking stick in her hand, and her body emitted a foul smell. Giselle's gaze sharpened, and a flying ball attacked the old witch from behind. Giselle was not the little girl who was chased and had nowhere to run. What? The old witch let out a strange cry, and her body suddenly exploded. However, her body seemed to be made of mud, so Giselle's attack was not fatal. The old witch quickly reconstructed another body. "Little girl, I'm going to eat you." The old witch screamed, "Eat me? If you have the ability, come at me." Giselle was not afraid at all. The 6 flying balls around her all extended spinning blades. Even a spirit body had powerful destructive power. A single touch could tear a spirit body apart. The old witch was about to cast a spell, but her body was already smashed. The old witch reconstructed her body again, and another flying ball shot out of nowhere and smashed her body again. The old witch again. The old witch angrily shouted, "Do you dare to give me time to cast a spell?" Although she could reconstruct her body every time, in reality, each flying ball caused a certain amount of damage to her spirit body. She was not truly immortal. She was only a dark spirit witch. Her body, made of mud, could only block some physical attacks for her, preventing her spirit body from directly coming into contact with the flying balls. For a spirit body, being hit by a flying ball head-on was almost the same as being hit by a metal ball. Giselle wasn't stupid. Was the one who cast the spell on the old witch? This old witch was obviously a voodoo witch. He didn't have any self-defense spells, so his defense was entirely dependent on the magic dragon scale armor. Magic dragon scale armor, on the other hand, wasn't particularly effective against voodoo spells. If the old witch released her voodoo magic, it would be hard to guarantee that he would not be injured. If he were to ask for help, it would be extremely embarrassing. Moreover, there was a rule in the supernatural organization. Sparring and fighting were two different things. If it was a duel between two companions, then it would naturally be fair. However, if anyone went easy on their opponent and was defeated, they would be punished. Giselle didn't want to challenge the rules of the supernatural organization with stupid ideas. Enemies had to be crushed to death to make people feel at ease. What's more, the enemy had their own merits. Looks like I can't waste any more time. I need to deal her a fatal blow. Just as the old witch was forming a new body, a flying ball suddenly exploded, and a large net covered the old witch. It wasn't an ordinary net, but an enchanted one. It had the power of lightning and fire, and Giselle had helped her pour the lightning power into it. Ah! The old witch screamed. She was bound by the net, and her spirit couldn't escape. She could only endure the lightning released by the net. The terrifying power evaporated the water in her mud shell and disintegrated the old witch's spirit at the same time. Done. Giselle touched her chin. Although she'd gotten rid of the old witch, she still lacked a one-hit kill. She should think about it after going back and come up with a move that could kill in one hit. Giselle circled the forest a few times and encountered many battles, but Giselle didn't interfere. After all, everyone here was her competitor. As long as they weren't companions, she didn't think that she needed to help. Along the way, Giselle killed a dozen more sea souls and 2 black spirit witches. Giselle became more and more aware of her own weaknesses. Actually, Giselle had this feeling before, but it wasn't clear enough. This battle had made her deeply understand this point. If it was against a weaker opponent, it didn't matter if she used a killer move or not. But against an opponent that was similar or slightly stronger than her, another killer move was necessary. Mord wasn't far from Giselle. At the moment, he was fighting with 20 black spirit witches. Although he was facing more than 20 darkened spirit warlocks, Mord could be said to be doing it with ease. Of course, it didn't mean that Mord was stronger than Giselle. It was because his magic was suitable for large-scale battles like this. This was because the same tactic could be used against one enemy, and the same tactic could be used against a group of enemies. Therefore, he needed to attract a few black spirit witches and then attack. This would be more efficient and save more mana. Morid scattered the magic seeds, and everything within a few hundred meters became Morid's territory. Countless magic plants drilled out of the ground. Some were full of dangerous exploding fruits. Some were vines that looked like tentacles, man-eating flowers, voodoo fruits, and so on. Anyway, Morid's skill turned the area into a shuraba. Of course, that was only true for the monsters on the Turin. But for others, the entire Mama Island was also a shuraba. Not everyone had Morid's abilities. Most of them couldn't even protect themselves. Some people thought highly of themselves, while others planned to fish in troubled waters. But the result was obvious. Turin was far more terrifying than they had imagined. The black spirit witches weren't the most terrifying. The 4th wave of monsters had already come down from Turin. The 4th wave of monsters was a group of deep-sea demon skeletons. They lived deep in the sea and were unknown. They were like God's prank, a half-formed piece of plasticine. Its body was as black as ink, with countless heads and tentacles. They extended down from the Turin and started attacking the spiritualists in a frenzy. They were individuals, but also a whole. Outside the coastline, Wenk turned around and asked, "How many ships have we lost?" 7 ships. Almost 50 casualties, Rhodes said solemnly. Could Turin really be destroyed? Turin's main forces were released towards Ma Island. That was why they could sneak attack from the rear. But so far they had lost so many ships. They didn't have much power left. Chapter 1516. In modern society, dozens of people dying was already a big deal. Even in a war zone, a medium-sized firefight might not result in 50 deaths. But now, 50 of Wenk men had died. She was also having a headache. Just then, a dozen black tentacles reached out from the sea. They were part of the deep-sea demon bones. Although they were not as big as the ones that landed on Nightmare Island, they were still a huge threat to the ships on the sea. The black tentacles pulled on a ship, which soon toppled over. The crew fell into the water. The heads of the deep-sea demon bones reached out from the sea and dragged the crew underwater. Another dozen people died tragically. Wenk expression became more and more serious. The last battleship was also destroyed. "Bring the big guy out," Wenk ordered. "Wenk, you're using age, man. We've lost so many people. We can either leave with the losses or show our trump card," Wenk said coldly. Although Rhodes was the captain, Wenk was still the one making the decisions. Rhodes' eyes flickered. After a long time, he finally nodded in agreement. "Go, push that metal cage out." A few crew members entered the cabin and pushed a 3-meter-tall cage out. The cage was covered in talismans, and inside the cage sat a creature whose entire body was pitch black. The creature's eyes were blood red. "Alman, help me attack that specter ship." Wenk looked at the creature called Alman in the cage. Her eyes filled with disgust. "Humans, is this how you pray?" Egelman glanced at Wenk with disdain on his face. "You're just a prisoner. This isn't a prayer. It's an order." "Haha. Although you've imprisoned me, what gives you the right to order me around?" Ageman's tone was also filled with arrogance and disdain. Wenk took a pendant from her neck. In the center of the pendant was a walnut-white gem. Seeing Wenk move the pendant closer to her, Ageman immediately wailed, "Take it away! Take it away! Take the angelic crystal away!" I said, "You can't disobey my orders." All right, I obey," shrieked Agelman. "Then let's begin. Help me attack that specter ship." "No, I can't unleash my power in this cage unless you tear off all the talismans on the cage," Agerman said. Wenk sneered. How could she believe such words? Tearing off the talismans that were suppressing Alman was equivalent to releasing him. What could they use to restrain him then? "We'll lend him our mana," Wenk said. Rhodes, Wenk and the 4 spiritualists on the ship grabbed the iron pillars of the cage and sent magic power into it. Every time they had driven Ageman, it was through this method. After Agerman accepted the magic of the 6 spiritualists, he tried to touch the metal railing, but it was as if he had touched a soldering iron. He quickly retracted his hand. A ferocious glint appeared in Agelman's eyes. Sooner or later, he would break free from the shackle and kill all these humans. "Ageman, hurry up." Ageman looked in the direction of the specter ship Turin. Suddenly, a red ray shot out from his eyes. The red ray streaked across the specter ship Turin, leaving 2 shocking scratches on the ship's hull. Impressive. They had worked hard for the entire night. Their achievements were not even as impressive as this demon's attack. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself with others. But in less than 10 seconds, Alman's red beam stopped. Why did it stop? "Continue," Wenk said unhappily. "Humans, your mana can only last for so long. If you want me to continue, give me more mana." Damn it. Wenk expression, which had just brightened up, instantly turned gloomy again. Even though she knew that Age Man was just brushing her off, there was nothing she could do. Want to send out more mana? They had already used up 70% of their mana. If they continued to send out more mana, they might fall into a coma. Just then, there was movement on the Spectre ship Turin. A figure flew up from the Spectre ship Turin and charged toward Wengsig's ship. Bang! With a roar, the figure landed on Wengsig's ship. A few people nearby were shaken and fell into the sea. Age Man! The figure recognized Age Man, who was locked in the cage. Age Man also saw the person clearly. TSK, TSK. Ado, you're here, you're here. The people around saw the person and realized that it was a skinny black man with strange patterns on his head and face. The black man had a slender and arched body. He wore metal rings on his hands and feet and held a wooden staff with a large head and small feet. It's him. It's him. He's the black slave who sacrificed Turin. The owner of Turin. That's right. This black man was Ado, the wizard who came from the African continent 300 years ago. He was the one who created the moving catastrophe, Turin, that lasted for 300 years. Behind Ado, there was a dark cloud that filled the air. If Helith was here, she would recognize that it was the mist of death. In the mist of death, countless black souls were howling. These souls were not imprisoned by Ado. They willingly became a part of Ado, because these souls were his African brothers. They had all died on Turin. Before Ado boarded Turin, Turin had been a sinful trading ship. Hundreds of black slaves were transported to Europe and America every time, but half of them died on the ship. Their resentment lingered for a long time. Ado was the match that lit the fuse. Age Man was Ado's contract demon. Although Ado had been dead for hundreds of years, his consciousness still existed. Therefore, Age Man was not sent back to hell and was still wandering in the human world. In the end, he was captured by the Hunters and became a weapon of the Hunter organization. After 300 years, you're finally here, my master. Age Man grabbed the iron bars with both hands. Before, he did not dare to touch them. Every time he touched them, he would retract his hands. Now he ignored the smoke coming out of his hands. He was pulling the iron bars apart. Age Man was a demon. He was not someone who was willing to be controlled and enslaved for 300 years. Every time the Hunters needed to use him, he needed to feed the Hunters' magic power. Every time, he would only hold back half of the magic power and silently accumulate power. In fact, he could have broken this cage long ago. However, Egelman knew that if he broke the cage, it wouldn't be long before he was caught again. Therefore, he had been enduring silently, waiting for Ado to come. He believed that Ado would come to him again. Finally, after 300 years of waiting, Ado finally came.